Hello everyone. We hope you're doing well. We're doing great, and we truly appreciate your ongoing support. We'd like to briefly address some comments regarding our audiobook series. Rest assured, progress is ongoing. That said, your feedback is vital. If there's a novel you particularly enjoy and want to hear more of, please let us know in the comments. Each chapter requires a financial investment, so we can only continue series that receive strong audience interest. Although we retain core names and plot lines, we make significant editorial changes to enhance clarity, pacing, and immersion. These are not simple recitations. We work hard to deliver a polished, thoughtful listening experience. Without sufficient feedback or engagement, we may need to discontinue a series. So if you're enjoying something, don't stay silent. Your input truly matters. Note, our default audio speed is 3x. If that's too fast, let us know. We're happy to adjust it. Interested in early access to unreleased audiobooks? Visit our Patreon. You'll get to experience new content before it reaches YouTube. Just to clarify, I'm a fan like you. I've purchased these novels and adapted them with care, while respecting all rights and guidelines. For updates, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, X. YouTube update: recently, YouTube flagged some of our content for including mature themes, realistic violence, and darker story elements. As a result, we've decided to stop uploading anything that violates YouTube's guidelines. If you'd like access to the full, uncut versions including the more intense or mature content, you can find them on our Patreon page, where we upload everything first. Available now on Patreon: Shattered Innocence transmigrated into a novel as an extra. Transmigrating over 10,000 years late, I was forced to become a mighty presence. I, the celestial dragon, rule the heavens through the double gate, reigning supreme in countless worlds with peace taming, Tower of God sequence strength, cultivation when you take things to the extreme. Naruto is an Uchiha with cyst. WTF, the centuries-old ancestor in our family take concubine again. Plus 18, Ichi, reincarnated in Bleach as a wizard. Thanks for listening and happy listening. Chapter 1, Sons and Daughters. Lately, there have been many superhuman crime incidents, so be extra careful on your way to and from school and keep in touch with your siblings more often. Also, don't linger on the streets after school, head straight home. The middle-aged man sitting across the dining table picked up a pair of chopsticks, advising unhurriedly. Upon hearing this, Kuminai lifted his gaze from his phone screen and gave the man a helpless look. I got it, old man, you've said it so many times, he drawled. The moment his eyes landed on the middle-aged man, he saw a panel appear above the man's head. Name, King, age, 45, gender, male, strength, A+ level, possesses top-tier combat power far surpassing 90% of the superhumans in the world, hidden identity, Justice Knight Azure Crow, rank number 7 within the Superhero Association. One of the 5 giants of the Superhero Roundtable. Annotation: only in China, people would refer to officially employed extraordinary characters as Justice Knights. In other countries like the United States and England, they are commonly known as superheroes. Are your elder and second brothers on university break yet? King said, accepting a bowl of rice passed by his wife, and looked up at Kuminai. They're both off, the eldest brother texted saying he'll take the high-speed train back in a couple of days. The second brother said the same. Kuminai picked up a piece of braised pork with his chopsticks and sent it to his mouth, vaguely answering while chewing. King fell silent for a while. Since they are on break, let them come back early. It's not very peaceful outside recently, it's safer at home. After saying that, he picked up a piece of spicy tofu, mixed it with rice, and put it in his mouth. Okay. Kuminai casually responded, then lowered his head to continue playing with his phone. Old King, you are just too neurotic. Can't you stop scaring the kids? The voice came from in front of the kitchen sink where a woman, wearing gloves and a kitchen apron tied around her waist, was washing dishes and sighed reproachfully. Kuminai glanced at her. That was his mother, or more precisely, the mother of this body. Just like his old man, a panel also slowly appeared above her head at this time. Name, Bewena, age, 43, gender, unknown, non-human species, does not have fixed sexual characteristics, strength, unknown, suspected to have exceeds the limits of Earth species, hidden identity, an extraterrestrial spy from Fangong Tower Star, disguised as human and has long infiltrated Earth, providing basic data required for Fangong Tower Star people's Earth invasion. Based on your environment, a very important emergency side mission has been formulated. Approach Bewena in disguise to hide your identity and try to delay the off-world colonizers' attack on Earth. The difficulty of this side mission is initially estimated to be SSS level. Warning, the completion of this mission will seriously impact future developments. Please proceed cautiously. Damn terrifying, indeed. Never mess with a woman. Kuminai mused silently with chopsticks in his mouth. not daring even to glance out of the corner of his eye at Bewena, who was washing dishes. King turned his head and said to Bewena, "Don't just nag at me, you should come eat too. Otherwise, the dishes will get cold, and you can leave the cleaning to the kids." Bewena snorted coldly, "Huh, I wonder who said they would do the dishes yesterday, and when I stepped out, I found the dirty dishes piled up in the sink." "That was an accident." King paused. "I'm getting older, not so good with memory." Listening to their conversation, Kaminai shrugged. He knew it wasn't an accident. The central district of Huanjing had suddenly experienced a superhuman crime incident the previous night. At that time, King was in the kitchen washing dishes, and upon hearing the news, he immediately put down the dish, wiped his hands, and went out without saying a word. No one knew what he went to do. His sister Beizini even sneered, saying the old man must have craved a smoke, leaving the dishes halfway to go down to the supermarket for cigarettes, which was not normal at all. Anyway, Kaminai only knew that last night's incident was resolved by a timely arriving justice night. No casualties, all involved superhumans were sent to prison. King still thought he was well concealed. He came back holding a pack of Zongwa cigarettes, with one hanging from his mouth, provoking his sister to exclaim, "See, I told you the old man definitely went for cigarettes." But in Kaminai's eyes, the identity of every family member was completely transparent to him, so such cover-up tactics were meaningless. Okay, an accident, an accident. Bewena washed her hands, took off her apron, picked up a pair of chopsticks, walked over to the dining table, and sat down to the right of Minai, saying to him, "Go call your sister down to eat." "You can't call her down, she's playing with her phone. She'll come down when she's hungry." Kaminai picked up another piece of meat into his bowl, responding listlessly. "You have to call her even if you can't." Bewena became more irritated and turned her head to shout at King, "Look at you, being a father. This is the result of spoiling them, all spoiled beyond recognition. Come mealtime, not a single one is to be seen, they only come down when the food is cold." King sighed and placed his chopsticks on the table. "All right, I'll call them," he said, slowly rising from his chair and walking towards the staircase. Bewena laughed and supported her chin with one hand, the other hand picking up a piece of ribs with the chopsticks and putting it into her bowl. "Something's not right. Should I give a heads up to the upstairs sisters?" Kaminai glimpsed King's departing figure, thinking this to himself. Chapter 1, Sons and Daughters 2. Then, taking advantage of his mom not paying attention, he exited the short video app he was browsing on his phone and opened WeChat. He clicked into the family group named Family Mutual Aid, which contained 7 members in the chat. Besides his parents, all his siblings were in this group. He held his chopsticks in his mouth, eyes lowered, and typed a message into the group with his other hand. "Dad just went up to call you all down. Come down and eat if you don't want to get an earful." No sooner had he sent the message than a series of clatter and ding-dong sounds came from upstairs. Following that, his 2 little sisters tumbled down the stairs, pitter-pattering as if they hadn't seen him, breezing past their father who was standing at the top of the stairs, and then grabbed a pair of chopsticks and a bowl from the cabinet before joining the dinner table. Their movements were more nimble than one another, like 2 little rabbits scurrying with carrots in their mouths. King, with hands on his hips at the top of the stairs, looked at these 2 little bunnies, helplessly stroking the stubble around his mouth. Smart move. Kaminai put away his phone and looked at the 2 sisters squeezing by his sides. The one sitting to his left was his older sister Beizini, sporting a shoulder-length bob with delicate and graceful features, still dressed in her middle school uniform. Every year during family visits, Beizini always received comments like, "Our little Xiaoni is becoming more and more spirited, she will definitely be a great beauty in the future." Name, Beizini, age, 14 years old, gender, female, power, B+ level. Absolute elite among superhumans, hidden identity, as Magical Girl Ash. She had been active in China for a long time and is also one of the core members of the Magical Girl Alliance. Beizini bit into a grain of rice and typed on her phone, quietly sending a message in the Family Mutual Aid group. "Thanks for the emergency help, big bro," she typed. Kaminai replied in the group, "No worries, just do me a favor later and buy 2 bottles of drinks from the supermarket downstairs." Beizini responded with a sticker of an angry panda with puffed cheeks. Kaminai put away his phone and slightly turned to look at his quiet younger sister sitting on the right, Beiziling. The face that met his eyes was very much like Beizini's, or rather it was almost identical, as if God had crafted them using the same template. Yes, they were twins. But aside from their faces, there were many differences between Beiziling and Beizini. For instance, Beiziling's pale white hair cascaded behind her head like frozen spruce on a winter's day, her pupils were a strange red, different from ordinary people. Her skin was pale as a specimen, without a hint of color. Albinism was the greatest difference between Beiziling and Beizini. Influenced by albinism, Her personality was much more indifferent than her sister's and was not as lively. Name, Basiling. Age, 14 years old. Gender, female. Power, A level, possessing top combat abilities that far surpass 90% of the world's superhumans. Hidden identity, vampire, also referred to as the Blood Clan. Suddenly, Basiling nudged Kminai's shoulder and whispered, "Bro, can you help me with a signature?" "A signature?" Chomping on a piece of tempura shrimp, Kminai looked puzzled at his sister. "Didn't pass the physics exam, Mom will scold me if she signs," Basiling answered straight away. No sooner had she finished speaking than a panel popped up in front of Kminai's eyes. Event analysis. The Blood Clan possesses an extremely special talent on the spatial cognition level, but during early growth, this talent could result in an inability to normally recognize certain spatial structures. Scram, scram, scram. Don't drag me into this. Mom will definitely lecture both of us if she finds out I've signed for you. Kminai whispered, taking his gaze away from the panel above her head and disdainfully shaking off her elbow. Basini, sitting next to Kminai, heard the conversation and leaned in, bravely volunteering, "I'll sign for you, I'll sign for you." "No good, your handwriting doesn't look like Mom's," Basiling rejected her firmly. "Shucks, if it doesn't look like it, then it doesn't. I can use magic to change it for you." Basini joked. "You better not actually use magic to change it." Kminai looked at Basini's magic girl identity above her head, sweating bullets. Honestly, Kminai was quite curious if the two sisters who got along so well were aware of each other's identities, one as a magic girl and the other as a vampire, both keeping their secret identities hidden from the rest of the family. Time ticked away second by second, the wall clock's ticking never ceased. As the sun set, the last rays dipped below the horizon, lighting up the clouds with a bright transparency. The warm orange light entered the house, casting a faint golden hue on every shadow in the kitchen. The parents and two sisters were laughing and talking around the dinner table, but Kminai didn't seem in the mood to joke with his family, simply resting his chin on his hand and gazing out the window absent-mindedly. The color of the sky was turning a shade between flushed red and silver gray, with a spiral trail of a jet strewn across the ruddy sunset. A child from some family had let go of their kite, and in the dim twilight, it wobbled upwards into the sky like a solitary martyr. The cool evening breeze wafted through the French windows, brushing lightly against his cheek. Kminai bit into a piece of chicken he held with his chopsticks in front of his mouth and turned his gaze back inside. As he looked at his family, a sudden chill ran through him involuntarily. Chapter 1, Sons and Daughters 3. No matter how many times he looked, Kminai always felt that the scene before him was too eerie, too absurd. An ostensibly superhero father, a mother with the true identity of an alien spy, an older sister who secretly played the role of magic girl, and a younger sister who seemed to have albinism but was actually a vampire. Put them anywhere, and you'd have an exceptional family, outdoing even Mr. and Mrs. Smith. But most crucially, apart from his alien mother, the rest of the family seemed to be unaware of each other's true identities. So, what sins have I committed to deserve this? Kminai heaved a deep sigh in his heart. 3 days ago, Kminai had been reading in the library, and in the time it took to nod off with his book closed, he had crossed over. In this world teeming with superpower users, mutants, and other superhumans without number, he replaced the soul of the unfortunate man with the same name and surname, becoming a member of this Chinese middle-class family. According to his memories, Kminai's family consisted of 9 people, 2 parents and 7 children. It might seem bizarre, but it was quite normal in this parallel world. According to the policies of this parallel universe, Huaxia families could have up to 4 children. When planning for the 4th child, they happened to conceive the twins Basini and Basiling, and thus they were born. At that time, the family already had 5 children. Then the mother, disguised as an alien, proposed to adopt a child. Referencing policy, a family with children could only adopt 1 child, so they adopted Kminai, the predecessor of this body. At that point, the family already had 6 children. Subsequently, in the orphanage, the mother felt particularly sorry for a frail and sickly child whom no one would adopt. According to policy, if one wishes to adopt a child with such special circumstances, it can be considered on a case-by-case basis. So, she successfully adopted this child and named him Kyongsu. Thus, up to that point, the family had a total of 7 children. Kminai ranked 4th, and due to his neither high nor low position, he often got bullied. But after more than a decade, life had been fairly warm and ordinary. Although his father was often as invisible as a ghost, busy with work, his mother had still raised 7 children from infancy to adulthood. Having referenced these memories in his brain, Kminai, upon first arriving through the crossover, really thought it was the same ordinary and happy family from over a decade ago. But the player panel in Kminai's eyes didn't tell him that. It even slapped his predecessor in the face, saying you're an idiot for not realizing that your home is full of monsters. It wasn't until Kaminai personally witnessed his family members and saw the panels above each person's head displaying extremely eerie data: alien, superhero, divine communicator, dragonkin, magic girl. Only then did he know that the predecessor of this body had been deceived by this family of superhumans for 16 whole years. Yes, after 16 years of living together, this body's former occupant had not realized that his seemingly ordinary family members each had their secret identities. Keep in mind that according to Huaxia's policy, regardless of the family members, everyone must undergo superhuman gene testing twice a year to avoid genetic mutations. If one is tested to possess extraordinary genes, then they must be separated from ordinary people, attending different schools or doing different jobs. Each year, the results of Kaminai's family's biannual tests were very consistent. Without exception, every time, the entire family was normal, containing not a trace of extraordinary genes within their bodies. Perhaps also for this reason, aside from the mother who was an alien, other members believed that apart from themselves, there were no other superhumans in the family. However, whether each member is as peculiar as that still remains to be seen. After all, Kaminai had only been on this side for 3 days, having only met his father, mother, older sister, younger brother, and 2 younger sisters. As for the eldest brother and a second brother, he had yet to meet them, because they usually studied at universities in other places and only returned home for the holidays, truly modern-day college students. Summer vacation was approaching fast, so in a few days they would be home, and then Kaminai would be able to fully grasp the whole picture of this family. To be honest, he was already under enough psychological pressure. Despite not harboring much hope, he still earnestly wished that the elder brother and second brother who would soon be returning home would, like him, be ordinary people rather than some magic girl, superhero, vampire, alien, or the like. Thinking this, Kaminai suddenly paused, took a spoonful of hot rice, and mocked himself in his mind. That being said, I'm actually not an ordinary person right now. I'm a player after all. But what exactly this system wants from me, I still have no clue after 3 days. Just then, a panel of black and red suddenly popped up in front of him, almost occupying his entire pupil, sending a slight shiver through his body. On the panel, text formed by flowing blood pulsated. The text continued to update. Having survived 3 days in the parallel world, the player's ultimate mission has been updated: exterminate all superhumans. Please do your utmost, by any and all means, to exterminate all the superhumans of this parallel world, until only ordinary people remain on Earth. Mission deadline, 365 days. Chapter 2, Extinction Plan. The ultimate task for all players is now unified: extinct the superhumans on Earth. Time limit, 365 days. Consequence of failure, all players will be exterminated together. The vivid, blood-red characters danced on the panel, flickering dimly and brightly like the fleeting flame of a candle. Kaminai paused for a moment, but his expression quickly returned to calm. He glanced at his family around the dining table almost imperceptibly, relieved that no one had noticed his unusual demeanor just now. Current number of surviving players worldwide, 99 out of 100. Daily report: today, the player whose spawn point was Kabukicho, Tokyo, Japan, Amamiya Kazuko, was brutally murdered by a superpowered criminal, with not even their bones remaining. Players are advised to avoid revealing their identities to anyone until they become sufficiently powerful, especially those close to you. End of today's report. After reading the continuous notifications, Kaminai took a light breath and brushed his hair back from his forehead with his hand. What's wrong, big bro? Baizini, seeing his behavior, nudged his elbow and asked. Kaminai didn't turn to look at her, and made an excuse on the fly. I saw the function question bank the teacher posted in the group chat, almost threw up. Want to help me with it? Baizini gave him a disdainful look. Please, I am just a middle schooler. Baiwena, who was eating, couldn't help but join their conversation. Seriously, you, as the brother, want your sister to help with your homework? Have you no shame? I'm just joking. Can't you take a joke, Mom? Isn't high school stressful enough as it is? Are you trying to kill me? As Kaminai was talking tough, he was also worried that his alien mom might suddenly decide to pierce his skull with her laser eyes. King chewed on a piece of fish and said softly, if you can't handle it, ask your sister for help. She gets good grades, she can teach you. It would be good for next year when she's in senior year and you're in junior, to look out for each other. Kaminai thought to himself that she was busy fighting crime and wouldn't have time to tutor him. Out loud he said, my sis runs out as soon as school is over every day, don't even see her shadow, let alone asked her to help me. Why don't you mention how your sister is ranked in the top 10 of your school, and you? Baiwena said, glaring at him. Me, oh, about me? I might as well go to a community college, Kaminai responded in a sarcastic tone, thinking if superheroes weren't extinct by next year, then it would be my turn, still fucking sitting here fretting about your college entrance exam scores and striving to be better than others. You. Baywana was so angry at his words that she put down her chopsticks and reached out to pinch Kuminai's shoulder, but fortunately, King stopped her in time, helplessly persuading, "It's just a kid's joke, don't take it so seriously all the time. It's not good for the child's physical and mental development." Baiziling and Baizini, the two younger sisters, didn't dare to speak, silently nibbling on their rice, occasionally glancing up at their parents' expressions. "If you're not in the top 50 on the next monthly test, see if I don't teach you a lesson," Baywana said, word by word. Kuminai looked down at his bowl and sighed in frustration, thinking that's enough already. "Do you, an alien spy, really need to maintain such a fierce image on Earth? Can't we switch to a gentle and beautiful girl disguise, or even a deaf-mute one, least likely to slip up? Is it really necessary to be so down to earth?" Even though he knew his mom was an alien, he didn't dare point it out. After all, Baywana's combat power was a question mark. Who knew if she might even surpass his A+ ranked dad? The best way to deal with this affectionate mother would probably be to find evidence of her collusion with extraterrestrials and report her to the Superhero Association, then let the officials use the Superhero Roundtable elites to deal with her. It sounds easy, but gathering evidence is the hardest part. Baywana had been lurking on Earth for over a decade, and even King, her husband, hadn't noticed anything amiss, let alone Kuminai. Moreover, King was a member of the Superhero Roundtable. It meant he was one of the world's strongest superheroes, and he hadn't detected Baywana's alien identity, which only illustrated how terrifying her abilities must be. His thoughts drifted to that inhuman task set by the system. Extinct the superhumans, what an easy thing to say. He mused, with only 100 players coming to this world, how is it possible to wipe them all out without missing a single one in a year? Thinking thus, Kuminai nibbled on shrimp while he opened his phone and searched for the Superhero Association's official data for the year. The results showed that currently, the number of superhumans officially registered in the global population is fluctuating around 25,000. Not to mention the unregistered wild superhumans, their numbers definitely aren't negligible. The family was a case in point. Every member had evaded the compulsory annual genetic test through various means, so none were officially registered as superhumans with the authorities. And seriously, if one were to really extinguish the superhuman population, one would have to confront, even topple, numerous formidable powers, like the Superhero Association, Magical Girl Alliance, Anomaly Control Bureau, Superdimensional Supervision Bureau, Time Management Bureau. And these are just the organizations known publicly. No one is in the dark about the number of organizations operating behind the scenes, nor how many nuclear bomb-level superhumans they hide. If one cannot extinct the superhumans within a year, will all 100 players who came to this world die? That's hilariously absurd, haha, see if I'm not laughing. As he mused, Kuminai turned off his phone and died a little inside. If not dead, he pretended he was already dead. "Little sis, some people are alive, but in truth, they are already dead," he whispered to Baizini next to him. "Have you gotten addicted to Lugzun?" Baizini asked with her chopsticks in her mouth. "Gzun is truly a master of human nature. I really feel like I'm alive in appearance but already dead inside," Kuminai said with a face full of despair, as he popped another piece of fish into his mouth. "It's just the college entrance exam, is it worth all this?" Baizini glanced at him and slowly said, "Bro, didn't you just describe to Mom in vivid detail how at worst you'd go to a university?" As soon as Baywana heard this, she erupted again, slamming the table as she shouted, "Who dares to bring up community college again?" Baizini was at a loss for words, blinking and mumbling, "Mom, I was wrong. I promise I'll definitely get into a university, and I'll make sure Big Brother does too. Might as well be dead." Kuminai muttered, thinking that being born into this family was indeed the worst luck of his past 8 generations. The task assigned by the system was exterminate the superhumans, yet he had transmigrated into a family where every member but him was a superhuman. The more pressing issue was that each of these superhumans was a one-man army elite, not a single one could be considered weak. This was no different than forcing a little Peppa Pig into the set of The Lion King for undercover assassination missions, was it? King rubbed his forehead and tried to educate these little rascals. "Can you just eat your meal? How do you manage to make such a fuss over a simple dinner?" He paused, then turned to look at Baywana. "And you complain every day that I'm not at home. If I was home every day, wouldn't you drive me into anxiety and depression? Are you even human?" Baywana started screaming in a high-pitched voice, "This is like widowhood parenting, widowhood parenting. Understand? I'm at home alone taking care of the kids. Do you think it's not tiring? For so many years, if you're not working, you're working, and now recently when I asked you to wash the dishes, you managed to sneak off to smoke downstairs. Okay, said King with a woeful look, almost ready to kowtow at the dining table. My bad, my fault. The kids are at that rebellious age, it's normal. Don't get so emotional. As he spoke, he turned to look at Kuminai, who was silently looking down, mumbling, look how scared the kids are, is this the family atmosphere we want? King, will you ever stop? Just as Baewina was about to erupt, King interrupted her, I'm done. Let's eat, let's just eat. He patted Baewina's shoulder, murmuring comfortingly, no longer raising his voice. Kuminai thought to himself that their power levels were quite fitting for the scene, realizing that the only one in the family to be feared was Mom, right? As he was nursing his headache, a new panel with fresh text popped up before his eyes. In accordance with the newly added ultimate task, a number of main missions have been devised for you, which can be viewed in the mission panel later. 1. Actions against alien visitors. Mission details: approach your mother, Baewina, under a disguised identity, kill her, and destroy the celestial colonizer's spacecraft coming to Earth. Difficulty of the main mission 1, SSS level, apocalyptic grade. 2. Actions against members of the Round Table Council. Justice Knight Azure Crow. Mission details: approach your father, King, under a disguised identity, gain his trust, infiltrate the international headquarters of the Superhero Association, become a member of the Round Table Council, and afterwards, find a way to kill King and all the superheroes in the council. Difficulty of the main mission 2, SS plus level, Dark Moon grade. Kuminai scanned the content of these two side missions emotionlessly. He complained inwardly, great, just great, what a wonderful filial piety script, as if I can't even get rid of this dutiful son's script. No matter how uncomfortable he felt inside, or how many times he cursed the system as a beast among jet fighters, the mission panel kept mercilessly updating. 3. Actions against Magical Girl Ash. Mission details: approach your younger sister, Baezini, under a disguised identity, while also contacting other members of the Magical Girl Alliance, and find an opportunity to completely destroy the Alliance. Difficulty of the main mission 3, a level. Looking at this, Kuminai turned his head and emotionlessly stared at Baezini, who sat on his left. Little sis, could you die for a moment? He asked straightforwardly, dropping the pretense. Baezini, with chopsticks in her mouth, turned her head to stare at him and said discontentedly, bro, are you even human? I just defended you a moment ago, so why are you pouring all your anger at Mom onto me? Never mind if you won't die, what do I care? Kuminai retorted as the mission panel kept refreshing. He shifted his gaze away from his sister, continued to chew on the fish, and read the text above. 4. Approach your second younger sister, Baezini, under a disguised identity, make contact with the surviving Blood Clan through her, ensure the slaughter of all the Blood Clan, and ensure the Blood Oath is completely lost. Difficulty of the main mission 4, S level, Red Tide grade. Kuminai looked at the text and then turned his head to stare at Baezini, who sat on his right. So, second sis, can you die for me? He asked earnestly. Baezini glanced at him and turned to look at their parents, about to suggest her brother might be mentally unstable, when a loud thud interrupted her as she attempted to speak. Turning back, she saw that Kuminai had banged his forehead on the dining table. Sorry. He put his hands together, apologizing with a defeated tone. Chapter 3, The Violent Madman Kaiyu still hasn't come back? King asked. She went to pick up Yongzu. Yongzu had a basketball game today, he'll be back late, Baewina answered. Kuminai, with chopsticks in his mouth, listened to his parents' conversation. Bae Kaiyu was his sister, Kyongzu was the youngest brother in the family and, like him, was adopted. Baewina seized the opportunity to scold King, look at you, claiming you care about the kids. You're right, I won't argue with you, he said. King shrugged his shoulders, the earlier drama at the dinner table had already taught him a lesson. Kuminai glanced at the Justice Knight Azure Crow identity above King's head and thought to himself that his old man did care about his kids, just didn't have the time to show it. He had searched for news about Azure Crow on his phone, knowing that it had been exactly 28 years since this Chinese superhero first appeared globally. Calculating based on King's age, it indicated that he had worn the mask and donned the battle suit at 17 and had been combating troublesome supercriminals around the world ever since. However, in every country, the reputation of Azure Crow was consistently terrible. In China, superheroes are referred to as Justice Knights. With the concept of Justice Knight gaining popularity nationwide, the national government began a serious examination of each Justice Knight's image management, overall quality, and especially their impact on the public, particularly minors, to ensure they set a proper example with their actions. If a Justice Knight received numerous complaints from the public and faced mass vilification in the media, the Superhero Association might take measures to force them offline. If the issue wasn't too severe, they might first put them on ice for a while before enrolling them in courses like Justice Knight Behavioral Management. They would then cautiously leak some updates on the superheroes' recent activities in the media and buy traffic to boost posts to salvage their reputation, until public sentiment warmed up again, legitimizing the superheroes' return to the public eye. In this complex era, superheroes have gradually moved beyond the scope of special police and have replaced most celebrity idols worldwide. As such, public expectations for their image have steadily increased, making each superhero ensure their conduct is flawless lest minders leverage any slip-up into a storm of public fury. Yet, under these conditions, Azure Crow, who was Kaminai's old man, had become someone who completely acted against the norm. His reputation in the media was especially poor. People described him as a vigilante who used peace as a guise for his tyranny, a rogue who didn't hesitate to impose his own brand of justice, a beast who only brought psychological shadows and violent influences to teenagers, utterly unworthy of the superhero title symbolizing hope and peace. Despite Azure Crow's extreme and controversial methods among superheroes, he was still a veteran figure of the Superhero Association and held significant influence within the Round Table Council. So, even as the public criticism grew louder and hot searches came in waves, he remained active and only received a few mild sanctions from the association. On his first day transplanted here, Kaminai delved into Azure Crow's details on the internet. In every photo, Azure Crow was always in the same unchanging attire, his face covered by a sinister mask meticulously grafted with sharp contours, his eyes within the eye sockets glowing bright and deep. The center of the mask featured a protruding blue bird's beak, sharp like a sickle, making him appear brooding and beastly aggressive. His attire was a sleek black metallic bodysuit and a cape that enveloped his whole body. Overall, true to his moniker, he indeed dressed like a giant raven. The Azure in his nickname, Azure Crow, came from the blue bird's beak on his mask. Quite the eccentric, bordering on mentally disturbed, it's no wonder why a superhero dressing so frighteningly villain-like received complaints. That was Kaminai's first impression upon viewing the photos. He couldn't help but internally remark, funny that you lecture at the dinner table about correcting a slouch to be taken seriously first for appearance, then for skills when you dress like this to fight crime. Maybe there's something seriously wrong with your head? Reflecting on this, he took another look at King. His heart still found it hard to imagine how his normally affable old man, once masked, could act so dark, tyrannical, and extreme. Whether the man at home was the real him, or the one behind the mask, remained unknown. As his thoughts wandered, the click of a lock suddenly reached his ears. Then, the front door at the entrance was opened. "Who's here?" Baywana asked. Bayziling poked her head out from the kitchen, looked with a blank expression, and said, "Sis, and a little brother." Then she lowered her head and continued eating. The two who entered locked the door behind them, washed their hands in the bathroom, and then walked into the kitchen where King and Baywana greeted them and told them to hurry up and sit down to eat. Chapter 3, Violent Rogue. Kaminai lifted his gaze toward Baekhyuwoo, who was his older sister. Baekhyuwoo had delicate features, clear, cold eyes, and a clean aura. Her soft, lead gray hair shone brightly, topped with a green hairband, and she was still wearing her blue and white school uniform. She was about the same height as Kaminai, around 1.72 meters, though Kaminai was slightly taller. Name, Baekhyuwoo. Age, 17 years old, gender, female, strength, a level, possessing top combat power far exceeding 90% of the world's superhumans, hidden identity, divine communicator, Wukong, holder of one of the 27 divine pathways, the Sun Wukong pathway, promotion pathway deduced for this divine pathway, immortal stone, spirit monkey, monkey king, immortal, horse's fortune, great sage equaling heaven, prisoner of the five elements mountain, golden hooped monk, fighting Buddha, currently. This divine communicator is at the horse's fortune stage of the promotion pathway. As Kaminai was staring in a daze at the absurdly long divine pathway, Baekhyuwoo had already taken a seat at the dining table. She looked at him and asked, "When did big brother and second brother say they'd come back?" "They both said soon, probably in the next couple of days." Kaminai replied casually. His gaze then shifted to Kyongzu, who had entered the kitchen, the youngest brother in the family. Kyongzu had a buzz cut and was wearing school uniform. He looked somewhat cute with his features, but he always had a stern face, like someone owed him money. Name, Kyongzu. Age, 10 years old. Gender, male. Strength, A+ level, possessing top combat power far exceeding 90% of the world's superhumans. Hidden identity, juvenile form of the disaster dragon kind. Looking at this family, what Kaminai was most curious about was his younger brother's identity. After all, a 10-year-old kid with A+ level combat power indicated that this so-called disaster dragon kind was undoubtedly dangerous without saying. "I'm full." "Me too, I'm full." Bayzini and Bayziling spoke in unison, rising from the dining table and walking out of the kitchen, both playing with their cell phones as they settled onto the living room sofa. Kaminai couldn't even be bothered to talk, put down his chopsticks, rose from the dining table, and followed them to sit on the sofa. Seeing both of them looking down at their cell phones, he took the initiative, stretching out his hand first to grab the remote control from the sofa armrest, and only after securing the upper hand did he ask, "What do you want to watch?" "Scream," Basiling suggested. "No way, if you watch that I'm running away right now," Basini said. "What do you want to watch then?" Basiling turned her head to look at her. "Isn't Harry Potter fine? You always have to think about your horror films." Basini gave her a sidelong glance. Hearing the movie title, Basiling yawned, with strands of her pale white hair swaying subtly by her ears. "I'm sleepy," she murmured with a smack of her lips. "You two make such a fuss, let's not watch anything, just listen to the news." Kaminai leaned back against the sofa, pressing the remote and exiting the on-demand channel to enter the financial news channel as he spoke. As a result, the three of them ended up hanging out on the sofa, listening to the news anchor's broadcast while playing with their cell phones. Soon, Baekhyun Woo and Kyungsu had also finished eating in the kitchen, each grabbed a bottle of drink from the fridge, and sat down on the living room sofa. Arriving late, Kyungsu could only sit on the armrest of the sofa, but he didn't mind. After all, that's the fate of being the youngest brother. "You guys are listening to finance here?" Baekhyun Woo took a sip of orange juice, her lips curving into a smirk, teasingly saying, "Not bad, all future bosses. Can't I improve my financial IQ?" Kaminai retorted offhandedly. That's right, that's right." Basini agreed verbally, not even lifting her head, insisting on playing with her cell phone, not even listening to what the host was saying. At that moment, 10-year-old Kyungsu took a sip of coke and said, "Anything is fine to watch, just stop listening to this finance stuff, a bunch of morons." Kaminai sarcastically countered him, "Younger brother, how come you're so high class? It's one thing to act like this outside, but at home, you'd get spanked by me." Baekhyun Woo took a sip of orange juice and casually put an arm around Kyungsu's shoulder, asserting, "I protect him at home, what's it to you? Got a problem with that?" Her voice was melodious, yet carried a maturity beyond her years. Kaminai rolled his eyes, thinking you're one with A-level strength and the other with A+ level, who could be tougher than you guys? "Fine, if you say so. No one in elementary school can beat me," Kyungsu added. Kaminai put away his phone and stated without expression, "Okay, little tyrant. Don't go eating elementary students' brains raw or they'll think you're all noble and virtuous. How can you talk as if our little brother isn't an elementary student himself?" Baekhyun Woo asked with a smile. Kaminai nibbled on a melon seed. "He is calling us all morons, and you still treat him like an elementary student? Quality education starts at home, and then at school and society." Still unrepentant, Kyungsu said, "A bunch of high schoolers listening to financial news, aren't you guys morons? I'm just a grade schooler here, wasting my life with you. Watch your tone, I'm a middle school student, okay?" Basini commented absently while playing on her phone. "I'm also in middle school." Basiling chimed in, not having heard what they were talking about. "Middle schoolers don't listen to finance, I'm still in elementary, wasting my life here with you all," Kyungsu said, as he tried to snatch the remote from Kaminai's hands. Kaminai refused to give it up. "You're in such a hurry, we all have phones to play with, we're certainly not lacking TV to watch, nor do we feel like we're wasting our lives. The grade schooler is the one in a hurry, huh? Dare to have mom and dad buy you a phone too?" Kyungsu was about to lose his temper, but Baekhyun Woo, with quick reflexes, grabbed the remote control from between them. Chapter 3, Violent Madman 3. Kyungsu glanced at her, not saying anything. At home, he only listened to his eldest sister, ignoring his other brothers completely. "Big sis, can you not coddle him so much? His rotten temper is all because of you." Kaminai turned his head, glancing at Baekhyun Woo. "Alright, stop picking on your brother." As Baekhyun Woo was speaking, she finished her orange juice and was about to pass the remote control to Kyungsu. Just then, the TV screen changed, and the voice of the host changed as well. Baekhyun Woo stared at the TV, her slender right hand suddenly tightened around the remote control slightly but didn't continue to pass it to Kyungsu. A buzzing sound like the flapping of gigantic wings came from the TV. It was a pair of pitch-black wings rapidly swirling in the night. This noise drew the attention of everyone on the sofa, who looked toward the TV where the interior of a helicopter was in view. A reporter standing bent over in a helicopter aimed the camera at the city below, shouting into the microphone, "Breaking news. The superhuman criminal Ghost Tree has appeared in the densely populated center of Hwanjing and has now climbed to the top of Hwanjing Tower. Another superhuman crime incident," Kaminai muttered, following the camera's view to a high tower constructed of steel that stood in the center of the city. At the very top of the tower, around 12 stories high, stood a blurry, minute figure. The helicopter's searchlight fell on him, making his profile pale and sharp. As the camera zoomed in, Kaminai could finally see the full figure of the silhouette. He was completely naked, showing clearly human contours, but his chest was embedded with a complex assortment of plants. Vines and thorns spread from the heart, enveloping all of his limbs. Most noticeably, antelope-like horns thrust skyward from both sides of his forehead, and these proud, curved horns framed him like a sinister deity. Before Kaminai could react, the man had already leaped from the top of the tower, and cries of surprise and screaming came from the crowd on the streets below. The camera continued to focus on the non-human creature. His figure, leaping from the top, continuously rotating in the air, brushing against the cold wind, created a chilling trail of fire red behind him, cold and blood-like. Subsequently, he slowly coiled into a ball, his muscles fluttering and swelling, as if about to be torn apart by the strong currents created by his rapid descent. Finally, he crashed heavily onto the ground amidst the roaring screams of the crowd below. Bang! Accompanied by a deafening noise, numerous cracks spread out, creating a deep crater about 3 meters deep. It's Ghost Tree. Within the densely packed crowd, someone pointed at the figure that had landed and yelled. Kaminai had tried before, only by seeing the target with his own eyes could he show detailed information about them. If using live TV broadcasts, only partial information appeared before his eyes. But that was enough. At that moment the information of that uninvited guest was already in his eyes. Code name, A-level wanted criminal, Ghost Tree, name, Mage Eel, Dyke, age, 47, gender, male, strength, A-level, possesses top-tier combat capabilities far surpassing 90% of superhumans in the world, identity, divine communicator Udiluxil, holds one of the 27 divine pathways world tree, related introduction, Udiluxil is the world tree in Norse mythology, described in the books as a massive grey oak tree supporting 9 worlds, including the central world of humans, Midgard, and the residence of gods, Asgard. It is currently impossible to deduce the extrapolation route of this divine pathway and the realm in which this divine communicator resides. Bring Sun Wukong to me. The ghost tree spoke in a deep voice as he slowly emerged from the pit, his fierce body wrapped in thorns fully exposed under the colorful neon lights, as if bathing in a sea of light. He extended his huge, root-like arms forward, and his rapid breathing accompanied by a furious roar echoed among the crowd. I won't say it a second time, call Sun Wukong out, or I will slaughter everyone here without exception. Ah, Sun Wukong. Kaminai slightly raised his eyebrow, thinking that he must be referring to the divine communicator, which would be my older sister. Thinking this, he subtly turned his face, using the corner of his eye to confirm Baekaiuwu's information panel. At that moment, Baekaiuwu was holding an orange juice, her face still calm. But both her slightly clenched hands and the cold, sharp light in her eyes revealed her nervousness. Name, Baekaiuwu, hidden identity, divine communicator Wukong, holder of one of the 27 divine pathways Sun Wukong. In the next moment, the ghost tree's colossal right arm, shaped like a tree root, suddenly aimed at the sky, which was also aimed at the journalist holding the camera. That right arm twisted at an insane speed, turning in an instant into millions of sharp thorns that surged forward, spanning a length of 100 meters. Following this, it slashed through the night sky, shredding the helicopter's cabin photographer into a spray of blood that dispersed into the night. On the television, the camera smashed onto the cabin floor, but the image it captured remained. Once the ghost tree pulled on his arm, the thorn twisted and condensed into a huge hand that erupted violently inside the helicopter's cabin. The terrifying force instantly caused the whole helicopter to tilt and sway erratically midair. In a matter of seconds, the helicopter turned into a fireball skyrocketing into the sky, along with the pilot vanished into the horizon. Just then, King finished washing dishes and walked out of the kitchen, standing behind the children leaning against the couch. What are you watching? He asked, hugging his arms and looking towards the television, his brows slightly furrowed. As the thud of the explosion settled, the entire television screen darkened, no longer showing any movement. At the same time, almost to the minute, several people gathered around the couch spoke simultaneously. I'm going downstairs to buy some cigarettes, said King. I suddenly remembered that I've agreed to meet a friend at the coffee shop tonight, so I won't join you for TV, said Baekaiuwu. Ah, speaking of which, I also need to buy some stationery, said Baizini. Chapter 4 Time betting. As the camera exploded, the TV screen first flickered with intertwined black and white static, and then was left with nothing but a deep blue background. Only the English words "no signal" remained, stretched across the middle. At that moment, King and Baekaiuwu both suddenly announced one had to go buy cigarettes, the other had a date with friends, so they quickly headed towards the entryway. Baizini said she needed to go buy stationery but first rushed upstairs to grab something from the bedroom, making so much noise on the floor that she got yelled at by her mother, who was applying a face mask. Kumenai found it somewhat amusing and shrugged his shoulders. He had anticipated that upon seeing such a scene on TV, someone in the house would inevitably become restless. He just hadn't expected King, Baekhyuwu, and Baizini to come up with such neatly aligned excuses, so overly perfunctory, truly a family trait. But it was also normal. The one who made an appearance in Hwanjing this time was rated as an A-class supervillain by the system. With the strength he demonstrated by casually shooting down a helicopter, the superheroes commonly seen were no match at all. Going against him would merely be a death sentence. And although King was notorious and had a history of bad deeds, he was still a signature superpower user in China Hwanjing and would not possibly ignore such a situation. He may have already notified other heroes of the Superhero Association's China branch not to act rashly, waiting for his personal arrival. Zhao Ni, if you need any stationery, just send me a list on your phone, I'll pick it up for you on my way back. It's not safe outside. King stood at the door, hand on hip, hesitated for half a second, and then called out upstairs. No need. I'll be home soon. Baizini's voice came down from upstairs. I can just go with her if it comes to that, old man, just go buy your cigarettes and don't suffocate yourself. Sitting on the living room couch and munching on a sunflower seed, Kumenai spoke up to smooth things over for Baizini. You lack respect. After dropping that comment, King left the house, taking the elevator up with Baekhyuwu. It wasn't until they had left on the elevator that Baizini slowly came downstairs to the entryway, put on her shoes and hurried out the door with her backpack. Just as she stepped out, her shoelaces came undone again. She slammed the door forcefully, and then quickly crouched down to tie her laces. Does that door have a grudge against you? Kumenai teased her casually. Mind your own business. Baizini retorted, and without even waiting for the elevator, she dashed down the stairs. Halfway through she changed her mind and called out, Bro, can you close the door for me? Kumenai raised his middle finger behind her back, but Baizini was already far gone. Look at this child, so impatient, wonder who she takes after. Baewena, who was applying a face mask in the bathroom, sighed. Yeah, wonder who she takes after. Kumenai thought to himself, it's obviously your temperament she's got, and sighed softly, stood up from the couch, took a few steps to the entryway, and closed the door. When he returned to the living room, only Kyongzu and Baeziling were left sitting on the couch. At the moment, Baeziling was squatting on the couch, her pale blonde hair draping over her knees. She looked up from her phone screen and turned to Kumenai. Watch a movie. No thanks. Then watch what? The news. Baeziling looked at the no signal on the TV and said, it's nothing new. In today's era, news of superhuman crimes would appear nearly every few days. Kumenai kept silent, thinking to himself that your two older sisters and dad are going to be on TV in a bit. It may not be newsworthy to you, but it surely is to me. If you're not watching the movie then I'm leaving. Actually, the remote isn't with me, Kumenai reminded her. The remote control on the couch was already in the hands of Kyongzu, the 1-meter-tall youngster imperiously situated in the middle of the couch, muttering, what's so interesting about the news? That criminal looks pretty weak. Kumenai sat down on the couch, arm resting on the armrest. He could take 100 of you little brats. While he said that, he was also aware that Kyongzu's hidden identity was terrifying, known as the juvenile form of the Storm Dragon, with a paper strength rating of A-class, not less than that of the criminal who attacked the Hwanjing Tower, and might indeed have the strength for a battle. But he also knew that if he wanted to play Kumenai well in front of his family, he had to relax a bit. That's how he would resemble the Kumenai in their memories. If he was too cautious because of their hidden identities and dared not talk back to them, it would actually have the opposite effect, making them more suspicious. Once these monsters found out that he was not the original Kumenai but a player who had taken over his body, he would be finished. At best, he figured his bones would not be found. Forget it, you guys watch the movie. Having said that, Kumenai got up from the sofa and headed upstairs with his phone in hand. He thought that the officials would probably not allow reporters to continue broadcasting the situation on site, so it was definitely not possible to watch it on TV. Ordinary people would think to turn on live streaming platforms, but domestic live streaming platforms would also restrict such scenes from appearing. Even if someone was live streaming on site with their phones, they would be immediately banned once discovered by officials. If it were those less dangerous superhuman criminals, it wouldn't matter, but in the face of high-risk criminals, it was necessary to strictly prohibit the footage from the scene to prevent the exposure of extremely bloody and violent images that could cause panic among the public. However, human nature being what it is, although official orders forbade it, there were still many illegal superhero websites that escaped the eyes of censors on the internet. The types of videos uploaded on these websites are either battle videos of superheroes and wild superhumans shot by passers-by, or erotic videos of famous female superheroes filmed by motels with hidden cameras, or even more bizarre, unspeakable videos. Some videos are not worth watching, As one side is much stronger and knocks down the other with a single blow, others are full of blood, with scenes of villains tearing superheroes apart not being uncommon. The developers of these sites generally fall into two categories. One is die-hard fans of superheroes or supervillains, the other is individuals looking to profit from site traffic. Anyone who grew up in this era, especially children interested in superheroes, would save at least one or two such websites to understand their favorite superheroes. A few years ago, Kminai's predecessor secretly logged onto an illegal video website and saw a video of the criminal timekeeper torturing the superhero Phoenix to death, which left him with a great psychological shadow. Phoenix, a superhero serving the United States, was not a superpower user or mutant, but a divine communicator like his older sister, Ghost Tree. The powers of a divine communicator come from the inheritance of deities in mythology. They usually have a crest appear somewhere on their body, granting them a portion of the deity's power. Just as Beikaiuwu's path to divine communication is Sun Wukong and Ghost Tree's is World Tree, the superhero with the codename Phoenix had the path to divine communication with the same name, one of the 27 pathways to divine communication, the Phoenix Pathway. In ancient Greek mythology, the Phoenix has the power to rise from the ashes. Similarly, this superhero had incredibly strong regenerative abilities. Even if he suffered catastrophic damage, he could revive in seconds, almost as if he were eternally living. However, in the video on the website, the villain known as Timekeeper exploited this, using different methods of execution to torture Phoenix to death time and time again. Revive once, get tortured once. So it went on repeatedly. During this, Timekeeper's methods of torment included breaking fingers one by one, drilling nails through the skull, chopping off limbs. When he lost interest in the punishment, Timekeeper uploaded the video to these illegal websites for others' amusement. It was also his way of telling the world that their admired superheroes were nothing but pigs to be slaughtered in his hands. Incidentally, 5 years ago, Kminai witnessed this scene. His stomach churned, and he vomited directly into the trash can. If he hadn't turned off the sound in time, with Timekeeper's maniac laughter and Phoenix's cries of agony accompanying the video, the mental contamination would probably have doubled. Since then, Kminai's predecessor never dared to enter any illegal superhero video website again. Fortunately, now the body was used by another person. Normally, at this time, just about any illegal website should have a live broadcast of the Huanjing city center, he thought. Thinking this, Kminai decided to try whether that website was still accessible. He typed in the address of the site into the browser on his phone and clicked to enter. As the page refreshed, a video website with a black and red UI appeared, named Grey Pigeon Network. Ignoring the dense array of ads, the largest live streaming box was placed at the very top of the site. It was live streaming the scene of Ghost Tree wreaking havoc on vehicles in the city center. Countless vehicles were flipped over by the thorny arms twisted from brambles. What was a bustling area full of people and flowing traffic instantly turned into a sea of flames. At the top of the live streaming box, in eye-catching red letters, was marked a line of text, live broadcast. Breaking news, divine communicator, Ghost Tree has appeared below Huanjing Tower. Next to this red text, there was another line of text marked with a hot tag at the end. Limited time betting is in full swing. Register an account, purchase virtual superhero coins, and immediately bet on which wild superhuman or superhero might appear to confront the event. Limited time betting? Kminai curled his lips. Okay, so we're betting like this? He thought that in the entire world, probably only he could accurately predict at least 3 superhumans who would appear in the city center in this live broadcast. Without a doubt, King, Beikaiuwu, and Baizuni would soon appear in this live stream under another identity. Chapter 5 Magic Girl. Upon clicking in, the list of heroes available for betting was a whopping 5,000 strong, all active vigilantes and wild superhumans in China. According to the website's betting rules, each person could bet on up to 2 superheroes. Among them, Justice Knight Azure Crow, the one with the most bets, was no surprise, since King pretty much showed up in Huanjing wearing a mask every day, earning the reputation as a model worker with the worst public reviews. For the populace, his presence had already become too commonplace. Upon reaching the 2nd floor, Kminai entered his room, locked the door, sat on his bed. Figuring that it was almost a sure win situation, he casually registered an account and navigated to the recharge interface. He used WeChat Pay to exchange the pitiful 100 yuan in his wallet into virtual currency, then entered the betting screen to filter names. Before long, he picked out these 3 characters from the list: Magical Girl Ash, Divine Communicator, Black Wukong, and Superhero, Blue Crow. They corresponded to Baizuni, who had just left the house, Beikaiuwu, and King, respectively. It was clear that under the names Justice Knight Azure Crow and Divine Communicator, Black Wukong, there were a large number of bets. No need to mention Azure Crow, but Black Wukong was specifically sought out by the nefarious Ghost Tree, So naturally, people assumed he would accept the challenge. Betting on these two, even if one guessed correctly, wouldn't result in a particularly large sum of money received. Therefore, Kuminai decisively placed all 100 yuan on the name Magical Girl Ash. And he prayed in his heart that Baizini wouldn't let him down, hoping she really wouldn't go off to buy stationery instead. Since she was already out the door, she might as well follow her father and elder sister to the scene to fish in troubled waters. As the successful bet pop-up appeared, Kuminai walked to his room on the second floor, locked the door, sat down on his bed, and clicked into the live streaming page. At this moment, the protagonists of this event had already begun to appear one after another. The camera person specialized in shooting such illegal videos, so instead of only focusing on the villain ghost tree, the camera kept moving, waiting for the appearance of any superhuman. After a while, the camera captured a silhouette, the lens gradually zooming in and focusing. It was the figure standing atop Wanjing Tower, under the night moon, where the orange glow radiating from the tower mingled with the clear moonlight, highlighting the lone figure standing atop the spire. She lifted her small face, her demeanor clear and majestic. Her jet black hair, like a cascading waterfall, lay behind her head, wearing a grey gothic dress, pleated with layers of petal-like ruffles, tied at the front with a bow, her right hand grasping an open umbrella held sideways. That umbrella was her magic wand. The umbrella's surface shimmered with a mottled grey and black hue, patterned with a series of clustered grey ornaments, an overwhelming variety of flowers with roses appearing particularly intricate. In the middle of the umbrella's pattern, a circle of thorny vines stretched out, as if connecting each blooming flower together. With just one glance at this umbrella, almost no one in Wanjing wouldn't be able to name its owner. The moment the camera zoomed in, the real-time comments on Ash Pigeon Net exploded exponentially, and Kuminai could hardly see the screen anymore. Walk, it's Ash. Lady Ash, I'm your loyal fan. No way, had I known, I would have bet on her. Isn't she usually only around on Saturdays and Sundays? I would have made a fortune if I'd bet on her just now. I thought the first one to show up would either be King Ya or General Ling Dong. They're not going to bail, are they? I bet my entire fortune on them. Kuminai clicked into the settings and blocked 90% of the bullet comments, thinking to himself, can you guys not drool over a middle schooler please, and for the love of God, quit the betting already. Oh, I'm one of those bettors too, so I guess it's fine. With that thought, he checked his earnings. Because he had bet all 100 yuan on Magical Girl Ash, and since she had indeed made an appearance, he won big. His earnings from this bet were 50 times his original stake, amounting to 5,000 yuan. At least I don't have to ask my old man for money now. Muttering to himself, Kuminai continued to watch the live stream. The dignified grey umbrella on display in the live stream is one of the iconic items belonging to Magical Girl Ash, and also a weapon she commonly uses in combat. Being her own brother, Kuminai had researched her extensively online. This umbrella, named Cinderella, has a lower section that is a magic wand, and once the upper part, the umbrella canopy, is opened, it continues to spread out layers of grey magical ripples. It is these ripples that create an upward thrust, enabling her to fly in the sky and offering tremendous mobility. Moreover, by pointing Cinderella's tip at the enemy and pressing the umbrella handle, the tip automatically opens into a gun barrel. According to some of the videos uploaded by her enthusiastic fans, Magical Girl Ash can not only shoot special magic-guided bullets far more powerful than ordinary ones from the umbrella, but when necessary, she can also fire a devastating energy beam from the tip that is said to be capable of obliterating almost anything. Logically, that move should be Ash's trump card. She only used it once against the superhuman criminal appraised as catastrophic by the Superhero Association. That time, she didn't just kill the criminal but also took out the top of a skyscraper. Besides that, when facing superhumans skilled in close-quarters combat, she would pull out a magic-enforced longsword from the base of Cinderella. However, unlike most magic girls, Ash seems not adept at using magic books and the magic cards contained within them. She has rarely used a magic book. In contrast, most magic girls who have appeared in countries like Japan, Norway, France, and Denmark invariably rely heavily on the cards from their magic books as their main method of combat. Because of her uniqueness, despite not appearing often, she has accumulated an incredibly horrifying amount of popularity on the internet. Please, what kind of magic disguise is this? Kuminai couldn't help but cover his face, peering through his fingers at the face of that magic girl in the live stream, feeling somewhat doubtful about life. He thought to himself, no wonder no one at home could recognize her. After all, Ash's features were much more strikingly cold and beautiful, like an older Baizini by 2 or 3 years, with British-styled makeup, wearing a cold expression on her face. The face that appeared before his eyes kept overlapping and colliding with his memory of what his sister actually looked like. This naked feeling of shame was like a subtle electric current traveling from his head down his bones to the tips of his toes. If he had to make an analogy, it felt quite similar to watching his sister, whom he had grown up with, one day completely transform into an internet celebrity sensation, twisting her waist with contrived expressions while singing Sunshine Rainbow Little White Horse on TV. Luckily, this so-called magical girl Ash was of the cold and stunning type, with few changes in her expressions and unpretentious movements, so no one at home could connect Baizini with her. Compared to those magic girls in London and Tokyo who scream slogans every time they appear, she seemed relatively normal. At this moment, along with the screams of people on the scene and the moving live stream, this evening's second guest also made an appearance on camera. The number of bullet comments on the Grey Pigeon Network live stream spiked once again. Chapter 6, The God Communicator Big Sis is here too, huh? But how come she's so much later than Baizini? It's not like Somersault Cloud can't beat an umbrella. Kuminai thought puzzledly, his eyes shifting to the figure that had just appeared in the live broadcast. He suddenly remembered that Baekhyuwu had left with their father, so he speculated that the two might not know each other's identities because they had left the building together, hindering each other until they were out of each other's sight before they could truly start moving. With that in mind, it was no surprise that Baekhyuwu was slower than Baizini by a beat. And where did Dad go? Before he could dwell on his confusion, Kuminai's attention was drawn to Baekhyuwu's appearance. At that moment, in the background of the live stream, an uninvited guest was standing in midair, stepping on a massive fog as deep as the night. The object under his feet shimmered like rising tide water and also resembled a pitch-black cloud. He wore a black hood and his face was covered with a monkey mask. Clad in a metallic long coat reminiscent of a trench coat, it gleamed with a cold metallic luster under the neon lights. His right hand, protected by a steel wrist guard, held a pitch-black staff upright behind his shoulder, its body occasionally visible and then disappearing under the LED lights. Somersault Cloud. With just one glance, Kuminai recognized the origin of the foggy mass that Baekhyuwu was floating on. Divine Communicator's power came from their corresponding mythological figure, and when talking about the symbols of Sun Wukong in Chinese mythology, besides Jingbing, it naturally was Somersault Cloud. The thing in her hand, that must be Jingbing, Kuminai thought again. The camera zoomed in, showing a chain descending from the sleeve of her trench coat. This chain was connected at one end to the folds of the right sleeve and wrapped around the surface of the Jingbing at the other. From afar, the black chain seemed to fuse her right arm and the Jingbing tightly together, inseparable. The eye sockets of the monkey mask were hollow, so through the holes, one could see a pair of crimson, sinister eyes that seemed to burn with fire. Divine Communicator, Sun Wukong. This was her original code name. Like all divine communicators, they were referred to by the name of their deity. But because of her dark attire, the fervent followers on the internet had given her a distinctive nickname, Black Wukong. Such a tightly packed outfit made it impossible to tell whether the person inside was male or female. The vast majority believed that Black Wukong was a male. So far, it was very possible that no one in the world knew the true identity of this divine communicator, Black Wukong, who had appeared out of nowhere 2 years ago. Except for one person. Kuminai stared at the sinister figure on his phone. If the system's information was correct, then undoubtedly, this person was his sister, Baekhyuwu. The ghost tree, which had been making a big show in the city center, was trying to draw out Black Wukong for a battle. Being one of the catalysts of this event, it was natural for her to appear in the city center as expected by all. At this very moment, Black Wukong was standing with her arms crossed, tilting her head slightly, looking down at the ghost tree without saying a word. The chain bound to her hand fluttered in the wind, with electronic billboards array behind her. The LED screens mounted on the surfaces of skyscrapers were displaying a red exclamation mark set above two long swords, the warning sign for a superhuman crime event. Loudspeakers placed throughout the city were uniformly broadcasting evacuation warnings, with a monotonous, cold female voice reminding every citizen to follow police orders and leave the city center as soon as possible. In the midst of the nearly world-drowning siren sounds, vehicles on the streets inevitably jammed together, many drivers angrily beating their steering wheels, taking their families to abandon their cars and flee following the crowd, led by the police. From above, it looked like a colony of ants moving along tree roots, orderly escaping the scene. Fuck, Black Wukong is here, his fans must be going crazy right now, he's really come out to battle. What kind of grudge does Ghost Tree have against him anyway? They fought in the United States 6 months ago and almost destroyed half of the Empire State Building. After that, Black Wukong didn't appear in the United States anymore, but went back to China, and Ghost Tree followed him there. Can you focus the camera on my Miss Ash? Stop filming this monkey all the time, or I'll switch to another channel. On PigeonNet, one barrage after another quickly swept across the top of the live streaming interface. In another corner of the street, Ghost Tree seemed to sense someone's presence and suddenly looked up, staring at the figure hovering on a cloud. In that moment, his expression twisted violently, and lines of blood slowly spread in his green eyes. "You have come," he first muttered to himself, then his tone gradually became heavier, almost pausing between each word, filled with a grinding, blood-sucking fury. "You finally came." As his voice fell, his arms transformed into thousands of thorns wrapping towards the ground, instantly lifting his body 100 meters into the air, stopping just above the LED screen on the facade of a tall building. Next, he turned one of his arms into roots and smashed them into the display, igniting sparks. The massive screen immediately lost a chunk, exposing the tangled, intertwined wires inside. Ghost Tree forcefully clutched the indented corner of the display, keeping his body flush against the surface of the high-rise 100 meters in the air, his green eyes staring fixedly at Black Wukong. "Do you know how long I've been looking for you? Since that fight we had in New York," Ghost Tree said with a demented laugh, while gripping the entangled wires inside the screen. The neon lights reflected on his fierce face and yellowing teeth. The relentless wind blew down from the night sky, slightly lifting the hood of Black Wukong, but she remained silent, just calmly looking at Ghost Tree through her monkey mask. "When did they fight in New York?" Kuminai was puzzled but soon remembered. About 6 months ago, his mother had taken his older sister on a trip to New York, and that's probably when his sister and Ghost Tree started their feud. He chuckled softly, thinking how deep this villain's obsession was, following his sister all the way from the United States to China. He also felt his sister's sense of justice was truly overwhelming. Going to New York as a tourist was one thing, but there was no need to bother with the criminals there, especially since the Superhero Association's New York branch had plenty of formidable heroes. Like, Divine Communicator Zeus, Mutant, Red Wolf Warrior, Superpower User, Two-Dimensional Swordsman, there were plenty of renowned figures who could have stepped in. Yet, during just those 2 days of vacation, Baekhyun Wu still managed to stir up such a mess, which was totally not worth it. In the video, Black Wukong slowly raised her right arm, with the jingbang, connected by a chain to her hand, also lifting, aiming at Ghost Tree's head. Initially, Kuminai did not understand the purpose of her using the chain to bind her arm and the jingbang together. But taking his sister's personality into account, he thought it likely that she used the chain to remind herself to always conserve strength, lest she accidentally kill the criminal with a single strike. "Can't you follow some rules? I was here first." Just as they were about to begin fighting, a clear and cold voice suddenly came from above, causing Black Wukong and Ghost Tree to both look up at that person. The newcomer held a gray umbrella, floating midair, her snow-white chin lifted as she looked down upon the two from above. Waves of magic rippled from Cinderella's umbrella, supporting her steady flight through the air. Relying on that umbrella, she descended gracefully, hanging slightly above the other two in a position slightly higher than theirs. Magic Girl Ash gently pulled at her black glove, the hem of her dress fluttering in the wind. With her left hand resting on the elbow of her right, which held the umbrella handle, she stepped through the air, slowly approaching Black Wukong. With a haughty and cold tone, she spoke, "Last time was really careless of me, allowing you to escape. We still have a score to settle." Chapter 7 Family Affairs. As the goth-styled magic girl walked towards diviner Black Wukong on the screen and left behind a line dripping with sarcastic undertones, Kuminai was left dumbstruck, his expression the epitome of astonishment. "Ah. When did you two sisters start having issues with each other?" It took him a full 2 seconds to come to his senses, thinking to himself, can't they resolve whatever the issue is at home? Must they don a disguise and lose face in public like this? Under the cloak of night, Magical Girl Ash and Black Wukong stood face to face. In the distance, a steel train rumbled across the elevated railway, its friction with the tracks scattering a shower of bright sparks. The cascade of sparks flew over their heads, so bright that even the neon lights on the building seemed dimmed for a moment. Seeing that the other party remained silent, she asked coldly, "Can't you speak? You were mute the last time we met too." True to her words, this divine communicator Black Wukong, whenever he appeared before people's eyes, indeed remained silent from beginning to end, not uttering a single word, perhaps not even half a word. Baizini was different though. It was obvious that her voice had been magically altered, completely different in tone and timbre from her usual speech, like two different people. If Kuminai hadn't been mentally prepared and absolutely sure that this character was his sister, he might not have recognized her at all. The sister who only knew how to throw tantrums at home suddenly adopted a domineering attitude outside, just short of bossing people around by riding on their necks. The contrast was simply too stark. At home, would you dare to speak to your sister with such arrogance? Hearing Baizini mock Baekhyun like that, Kuminai couldn't help but lose his composure. He pictured it, if Baekhyun actually responded to her, Magical Girl Ash would be scared out of her wits upon hearing the familiar voice. Her eyes might just pop out of her head. Then, following her usual style, she might first cross her arms and maintain her composure for a while, and after everything had settled, find a secluded spot to begin whining, Sister, why is it you? There were too many people just now, I didn't mean to. Your servant knows she's wrong, woo woo woo. The more Kumenai thought about it, the more outrageous it seemed. He had originally thought the main character of the night was that villain, but now all the attention had shifted to his own family. Please, if you're going to create an alias to strike at a criminal, could you not make a mockery of your own family? Do you think you're being funny? He thought to himself but also came to some conclusions. It's another matter whether Beikaiwu knows that Beizini is magical girl Ash. However, it seemed certain that Beizini had no clue that Beikaiwu was divine or Black Wukong, otherwise she wouldn't be so aggressive, every line she spoke clearly itching for a fight. At that moment, the ghost tree frowning at being left out was draped over a high-rise building's LED display, the electrical wire clutched in his hand producing a flickering light that illuminated his baffled, complex expression. Wasn't he the damn villain? Having thrown the whole district into chaos, with alarms blaring and smoke billowing, shouldn't the spotlight be on him? Why was he suddenly sidelined? 3 succinct questions popped into his head, his brow furrowing deeper as he felt an overwhelming sense of humiliation. Meanwhile, as this weird scene unfolded, the number of comments on PigeonNet exploded yet again, reaching a new peak. According to official information, both Magical Girl Ash and Divine Communicator Black Wukong were not part of the official camp and thus were considered superhumans but not quite superheroes. At most, they were vigilantes. Since they could present themselves as vigilantes not under official control before the public, and their identities were not in the superhuman database, they must have been illegal superhumans who had escaped genetic testing, and they should have been captured by the Superhero Association for a thorough interrogation. When such characters took action, they not only faced the pressure of criminals but were also under scrutiny by official forces. Officials never supported unregistered wild superhumans donning tight suits and pretending to be law enforcers, which was undoubtedly contrary to the law, essentially defecating on the Superhero Association's doorstep. But it was precisely because of their controversial status, as well as their unique outfits and abilities, that they kicked up a frenzy on the internet. The global discussion about Magical Girl Ash and Divine Communicator Black Wukong even rivaled some of the official superheroes in popularity. So now, a large group of people on PigeonNet were asking if anyone could explain when this Magic Girl and Black Wukong became rivals. But Kumenai, who sat on the bed, was arguably the most shocked of all. The scene before him didn't quite align with his expectations. He had thought that if his father, older sister, and younger sister showed up together, even if they didn't know each other's identity, as righteous characters, they should logically join forces to take down the criminal who dared to cause trouble in Huanjing. Right? But when he arrived at the scene, it turned out that it was his sister and his younger sister who started to quarrel first. Yes, 2 righteous characters started fighting in front of a villain. If this got out, the discussions would certainly not be lacking. At this moment, looking at the panels above the heads of the 3 of them, Kumenai suddenly remembered that Beizini's combat rating was only B+ level, a full tier below Black Wukong and the Phantom Tree. Yet among the 3, it was she who behaved most arrogantly, striking an unyielding stance. Thinking back to Beizini's reaction half an hour earlier, Kumenai suddenly understood why she rushed out in such a fury after hearing the news on television, insisting on joining the commotion. Kumenai held his forehead and sighed, so she was out for revenge against our older sister? No wonder she was so fierce. At that moment, the Phantom Tree was staring at the 2 from a distance, narrowed its eyes, and pulled up the corners of its mouth coldly as it said, word by word, "You 2 pieces of trash, are you here to play house?" Dude, they're really not playing house, they are indeed family. Kumenai covered his face, feeling slightly inebriated. Watching his siblings tear each other apart on live TV was indeed a unique experience. As soon as he spoke, the Phantom Tree suddenly roared, viciously aiming its left arm at Magical Girl Ash, not far ahead. In an instant, that arm morphed into thousands of thorny vines that stretched out, aiming straight for Ash. With one swipe of this move, the Phantom Tree had effortlessly knocked down a helicopter before, and its danger was imaginable. If Ash were to be hit, she might be shredded to pieces by the encircling thorns in the blink of an eye. Catching a glimpse of this out of the corner of her eye, Ash didn't even turn her head. Instead, she triggered a gust of air from the tip of Cinderella's umbrella, using the reaction force to propel her body in the opposite direction and avoid the countless thorns. The thorns, like a giant python, slithered past her body with a thunderous noise, the howling cold wind lifting her hair strands. She can even dodge that. Kumenai raised an eyebrow slightly, thinking that Beizini indeed had some skills. The Phantom Tree had attacked in less than a second, and Beizini had reacted immediately after speaking with Black Wukong. As the wind died down, Ash's blown hair also fell back into place. She slowly lifted her gaze from her hair, her expression still calm, but the displeasure on her face was now more evident. "Wait till I take down this phantom something, then I'll come after you, monkey," she said. With that, she drew a clear long knife from the base of Cinderella's umbrella handle, turned her head slowly, and shifted her gaze to the enraged phantom tree. Too cocky, little sis, can't you restrain yourself a bit? Kumenai felt embarrassed for her while pouring himself a glass of water from the bedside. Even in the face of such provocation, Black Wukong remained silent, just standing on the somersault cloud, tilting his head to watch her. Then, he pulled out a cell phone from the pocket of his metallic coat, typed swiftly with one hand, and turned the screen towards the magic girl who had drawn a long knife from beneath the umbrella. The cameraman secretly filming the scene lay atop the rooftop of a high-rise building, and he zoomed his lens in countless times. Finally, everyone watching the live broadcast could clearly see the content on the cell phone screen. On the phone was a blank memo with the message written on it: "I don't have time to play with kids, I suggest you step aside, he came looking for me." Kumenai had just taken a sip of water and, upon seeing this text, sprayed it out, coughing while thinking to himself, with the situation this heated, it seems unlikely that you two sisters won't have a fight tonight to settle things. Just then, Kumenai suddenly remembered someone, that was King, who hadn't yet appeared on the scene. So he couldn't help feeling puzzled. Based on the usual pace, King should have put on his battle dress and arrived at the scene by now, appearing in front of the camera. Wait, where's Dad? Kumenai sighed and thought to himself. Could you be a bit useful? Hurry up and go over there, blast the criminal with a punch, and while you're at it, discipline your two daughters, don't let them create a scene in public anymore. Chapter 8, Midnight Ravens. Kumenai took a sip of plain water and set down the cup. His pupils reflected the fiery scenes on his phone, his ears inundated with the roaring of bursting air currents. It was as if he were right there. The quality of the video and audio from the live stream suggested that the filmmaker had used sophisticated equipment. Such effects could only be captured by illegal filmmakers specializing in recording such scenes for profit, a far cry from random passers-by whipping out their phones to take a video. However, although the actions and dialogues of the three characters in the sky above Huanjing were mostly captured, Kumenai wasn't entirely engrossed. Compared to the three people in the frame, he was more concerned about where King had gone. Could he have been intercepted by other superhuman criminals? After all, he had many enemies. But then, another possibility occurred to Kumenai. King was most likely helping the police rescue the vehicles previously hung up on Huanjing Bridge by the ghost tree. At this moment, the illegal filmmaker knocked the camera against the railing of the rooftop, drastically adjusting the lens to better capture the three figures darting between skyscrapers and dazzling neon lights. Every frame was like glimpsing flowers through the fog, fleeting and elusive. Amid the roars, glass curtain walls and LED giant screens on the surface of the steel buildings shattered consecutively. As the skirt of magical girl Ash fluttered, millions of glass shards poured down from midair like a furious snowstorm, lavishly sprinkling onto the streets congested with vehicles. As the glass splattered down, hitting car after car, the piercing alarms of car security systems once again filled the streets. Kumenai's eyelid twitched. He thought, why does it feel like you guys are going to have to renovate the entire city center if you keep fighting like this? Can't you pull out your big moves earlier instead of probing each other? Are you really going to escalate like in Dragon Ball from Super Saiyan 1 to Super Saiyan 5? Especially with curfew time fast approaching at home, Beizini and Beikaiyu, you two better not get locked out by Mom. Just as Kumenai was getting absorbed, suddenly, a hoarse and grim voice sounded almost within arm's reach, casually asking, "What are you doing?" Kumenai was slightly startled then blurted out, "What the hell?" Soon, he confirmed that the voice seemed to have come from beside the filmmaker. But wasn't the filmmaker secretly filming from the rooftop of a nearby residential building? Then who could be speaking right beside his ear? "You are committing a crime. Filming fights involving superhumans is strictly prohibited by law." The voice stated so. Sinister and hoarse, it echoed eerily on the silent rooftop. Like a giant crow was cawing, chilling to the bone. The filmmaker turned his head, only to see a profound shadow swaying in the moonlight at a corner of the rooftop, resembling a giant crow. At that moment, the camera also reflected the corner of the rooftop, revealing the elongated silhouette hidden in the shadows. His face was adorned with a sinister, finely arched mask. The eyes peering out from the eye sockets were bright and deep as torches in the darkness. A blue bird's beak protruded from the mask, and his cloak, like a large robe, concealed his body as though melding him into the night. Seconds before, eagle-eyed viewers had already recognized the source of the voice. Upon seeing this image, the upper part of the live stream was instantly filled with lines of commentary. "It's King, yeah, I told you this jerk would show up. He finally came, I bet 30,000 on him, thought I was gonna go bankrupt, holy shit. Kenya is here." This is the first time an illegal live stream has captured Kenya's face up close. What are you waiting for? Start recording. As Kumenai was tearing open the packaging of an instant bread roll, he caught sight of this scene and couldn't help but pause. Old Daddy's finally turned up. he was thinking while tearing open the bread's packaging. You are way too slow, your two daughters have already fought the villain for 2 or 3 rounds up there. At this moment, dressed in a battle suit, the superhero Kinya was leaning against a corner of the rooftop, his deep eyes behind the mask staring straight at the surveillance stealer. The sharp bird beak on his mask seemed like a blade poised to take a life, aiming directly at the camera. The surveillance stealer saw him and, while aiming the camera at him, screamed incoherently, "Don't come any closer. A lot of people are watching." The camera shook wildly, highlighting his fear. Seeing the man's ghostly reaction, Kuminai couldn't help but laugh, thinking to himself, "Big brother, you're really funny. Is such a reaction necessary? The guy in front of you is dressed a bit terrifyingly and quite shabbily, but he is an officially recognized superhero after all, right? Do you need to be so startled? Plus, you are live streaming, even if my dad has a bad temper, he shouldn't really. Kuminai was thinking this when, in the next instant, Kinya disappeared from the spot. At the same time, the camera lens suddenly darkened as if covered by a cloth. What remained was only silence. Death-like silence. Huh? Kuminai let out 2 questioning sounds one after another, his fingers tearing the packaging pausing, and his expression froze for a second. Wait, Dad didn't really get rid of him, did he? At this time, the entire live stream was dark, with only lines of pale barrage flying rapidly across the top. After a brief silence of 2 seconds, he put down the bread, exited the live stream room, and opened the live stream list on Grey Pigeon website, only to discover a whole page of live streams about the ghost tree. So he breathed a sigh of relief, as long as there's something else to watch. He was about to click into another stream when, in just that split second, all the thumbnails for the live streams turned black, one page after another. Just like toppled dominoes. In the end, what was left was the death-like darkness and stillness. Seeing something was wrong, Kuminai's expression changed. "We really won't have anything to watch now, will we?" he said, then flipped through 2 more pages, only to find the next page's 10 live streams also turned black one by one. As if someone had turned off the lights. Without exception, the last scene in these surveillance thieves' live streams was a huge crew swooping down from the sky or bursting out of the shadows. After 3 seconds of silence, Kuminai, gripping the half-opened package of bread, sighed deeply. He was feeling very mixed, as if someone had unplugged his internet connection. He had been curious to see what kind of chemical reaction would occur when his dad, sister, and younger sister got together. Well, now no one will see it. Thinking this, Kuminai flipped through Grey Pigeon website, randomly clicking into a few live streams. As he expected, the barrage in these streams was furiously cursing Kinya. He finally understood why the superhero Kinya had such a bad reputation on the internet. Some things really weren't without reason. "Dad, what on earth are you doing, Dad?" he muttered, hanging his head and complaining softly. "You show up at the scene, do nothing, and start by unplugging everyone's internet, right? You're really classy as hell." Chapter 9, The Dragon of Calamity. Kuminai took a bite of his instant bread and flipped through a few pages of Grey Pigeon Station's live broadcast, only to realize that King had indeed cleaned out all the illicit photographers thoroughly. Not one survived. I guess hundreds of illegal websites bystanders watching the live broadcast all got banned overnight. The number of detractors sure grew by a few blocks, huh? That's our Chinese superheroes for you. First off, they show up like ghosts from a horror movie scaring people, then, instead of dealing with the criminals, they pull the plug on the common netizen's internet. Might as well stop calling him Kinya and rename him the Terror Crow Man. Haha, do you guys have these dark heroes abroad or what? Dark heroes, you know. Not to mention others, even your son is thinking of filing a complaint against you at the Superhero Association. As Kuminai muttered sarcastically, he operated his cell phone and logged out of Grey Pigeon Network. Just as he put down his phone, a system panel suddenly popped up in front of him. System Announcement 1, up until now, all the players who survived have passed the 3-day adaptation test. The purpose of this test is to help players understand and adapt to the current situation of this parallel world. Warning again, do not reveal your identity to the superhumans around you until you have sufficient strength. System Announcement 2, tomorrow morning, features like daily missions, global instances, player communication, system store, etc., will officially be launched. Great, finally I can discuss these past 3 days with the other 90-something unlucky ones chosen, hoping their start was as hellish as mine, surrounded by a bunch of superhumans with magic dead data. Otherwise, I really might kill myself. Thinking this, Kuminai selected, confirm receipt of notices, at the bottom of the panel, got out of bed, and walked out of the room in his slippers. Just as he reached the second-floor corridor, Baywin's voice came from downstairs. "Minai, call Zealing down to get the cut fruit." "Coming." Kumai casually responded to her while walking in front of Basiling's room. The door was closed, so he gently knocked and said with annoyance, "Mom's calling you downstairs for fruit." As he finished speaking, there was no response from inside. He knocked again, still no response. "She's sleeping this early?" He raised an eyebrow, turned the doorknob, hearing a click. It was locked. He glanced at his phone, only 7 o'clock. "She's not inside." Kumai found it weird. Basiling's room was eerily quiet yet tightly locked. But then, remembering that his younger sister Basiling was from the Blood Clan, he figured it all out. Kumai felt she had probably snuck out the window by now, off to the hospital to steal blood bags or, more directly, attack passerby to replenish her blood. So what does it have to do with me anyway? He stretched lazily, moved under the orange cucumber lights left from last Christmas, and started walking downstairs when he suddenly heard a door opening. Following that, Baywina's surprised voice came from downstairs. Isn't that Xiaomo? How come you're back so early?" Kumai paused at the stairwell. "My brother is back, at this time?" "How so sudden, when he just told me this morning he might not return for another couple of days?" With that thought, his pupils constricted, and a wave of inexplicable unease welled up inside him. Half an hour earlier, Tuanjing, Old Jingmei District. In a secluded alley rarely trodden by foot, a white-haired girl slowly raised her head from the neck of a corpse, the moonlight brushing over her blood-stained lips and her silver-dyed hair. Her gaze was calm, devoid of any emotion. Basiling wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth with the back of her hand, looking away from the corpse. "Full," she muttered softly. Just then, from the deep shadows of the alley, a hoarse yet majestic voice came, sounding like a bell yet with a childish tone. "Are you eating a human?" the voice asked. Basiling paused for a moment before slowly turning her head, lifting her eyes from beneath the silver bangs. With the sensory abilities of the Blood Clan, it was the first time she encountered someone who could approach her silently. But soon she realized that hidden in the shadows was not a human. It was a dragon. This dragon, about 2 meters long, had upright pupils swirling with a lava-like hue. Its dark scales, metallic and layered, gave it a textured look. Currently, it sat on the ground, its tail hanging down like a broom, casting a long shadow. Believe it or not, it was somewhat cute, resembling a young dragon. Basiling stared at it for a while, her expression softening. She was a vampire herself, so what was so strange about a world with magic girls, superheroes, or even a dragon? Thinking this, she shook her head. "No, I never eat humans." "Then what are you doing?" asked the dragon from the shadows. "Drinking blood," Basiling answered. The young dragon cautiously moved its claw forward, revealing more of its body from the shadows, and said tentatively, "Wouldn't it be more convenient to just eat him?" Slowly, its face emerged into the harsh moonlight, displaying the fierce yet juvenile aspect of dragons, sometimes childlike, at times like a born executioner. After looking at it for a while, Basiling asked softly, "Are you hungry?" Chapter 9, The Dragon of Calamity to him. "Can you give him to me?" the young dragon asked, swallowing a gulp of saliva. She fell silent for a moment. "But you need to eat a bit cleaner, or it might leave my traces." "Don't worry, neither you nor I want to be caught by humans." As the young dragon spoke, it crawled over, lifted the corpse with its claws, and slowly dragged it into the corner. Basiling blinked those blood-red pupils, hugging her knees and sitting on the ground, staring at it for a while. She was still curious, why was there a dragon here? But she was afraid her mother would check her room and find her missing, so she patted her buttocks, climbed up the ladder hanging from the wall, and stepped onto the iron plate holding an air conditioning unit. Then with a light jump, she leaped onto the roof of the residential building. Once on the roof, Basiling turned back, casting her eyes down at a young dragon crouched in the shadows. It seemed the dragon didn't want her to see it eating, so it just crouched like a cat on the ground, raising its head, quietly waiting for her to leave. Human and dragon, a pair of red eyes met in the dark night. In the moonlight, she whispered softly, "Dragons and vampires alike, everyone hates us." The young dragon stared blankly for a moment. Having said that, Basiling slowly turned around, her hands behind her, and walked along the edge of the roof as if she were walking a zebra crossing on the road. Gradually, her figure merged into the night. The young dragon, lifting its head, gazed blankly at the empty night sky for a long time, then placed its claws on the corpse and began to eat silently. Much later, a dense pool of blood flowed out from the shadows. The corpse was no longer there. It sighed deeply, flapped its still undeveloped short wings, and flew towards the night sky, hiding on the rooftop of an apartment building. Huddled in a corner of the rooftop, the young dragon's body gradually changed, taking the form of a human boy. Qiangzu, embracing his naked body, curled up in a corner of the rooftop. He spaced out for a while, mumbling, "Yes, sister, we are both monsters." This wasn't the first time he had seen Basiling drink blood, but this was the first time he had mustered the courage to transform into a dragon form to say a word to her. Usually, he would always hide his presence, stealthily following behind her, silently hiding in a corner. At those times, he would think, it turns out it's not just me who's a freak in the family, sister is too. Oh well, she has gone home, I should go home too. Kyongsu sighed, picked up the clothes he had removed before transforming, put them on, and then strolled across several rooftops. Following Basiling's scent, he walked toward his home. Shortly after he left, the color of the shadow on the ground in the alley he had left slowly grew darker, and a figure emerged from within the shadows. It was a young man, his features so delicate they were nearly feminine, who watched expressionlessly the pool of blood on the ground. After a long while, the youth murmured softly. Indeed, the descendant of the Calamity dragon has emerged. He took out a scroll bearing green bird and a brush from the sleeve of his clothes. Opening the scroll carried by the bird, he used a brush to write, "Report to the ninja sect, the descendant of the Calamity dragon is in Huanjing." From the remaining traces, it is still in its juvenile form. It's not too late to find it now. Requesting reinforcements. Having done all this, the youth closed the scroll, secured it to the back of the bird, and let it fly from his palm. It flapped its wings rapidly and soon disappeared into the moonlight with the scroll. The young man's figure once again turned into a mass of ink, melting into the shadows under his feet. Soon after, the youth emerged once again from a pool of shadows, appearing in front of a residential building, with no one around. He looked up at the sign of the building Old King Mai Street Unit 1 Phase 5 Building 1201, then entered the staircase and took the elevator to the 9th floor. The elevator doors slowly closed, and just at the moment they were about to shut, a young hand reached in, wedged in the middle of the elevator doors. Watching this eerie scene, the youth was first stunned, then slightly focused. He wiped the sweat from his forehead. Thinking, from such a distance, could the Calamity dragon possibly have detected his scent? No, he couldn't be sure yet. With a hand wedged in the middle of the elevator doors, they slowly opened to each side. Under the flickering lights at the hallway entrance, a boy dressed in a black hooded sweatshirt stood at the entrance. He withdrew his hand that had been blocking the elevator door and expressionlessly looked at the nervous young man standing inside. The two exchanged a glance, and one of them spoke. "Second brother?" Kyongsu looked at his face, slightly stunned, and spoke first. He thought to himself that he had just finished consuming someone and happened to run into his second brother returning from outside. Xiamo also paused slightly. Then, looking at that familiar, kindly face, he relaxed deeply. He thought to himself that he had really been too paranoid, given that earlier, in the alley and from such a distance, using the utmost stealth methods and focusing on consuming the disaster dragon, how could it possibly have noticed his presence? So stupid. Xiamo chuckled as though laughing at himself. "Little brother, long time no see," he said. Kyongsu, with his hands in his pockets, walked into the elevator, looked back at him, and asked curiously, why didn't you say you were coming back? "I said you were still at university and would be back in a couple of days. Something came up, so I came back early," Xiamo answered. Accompanied by their lukewarm conversation, the elevator doors closed smoothly this time. With a faint hum, the elevator began to ascend slowly. Xiamo reached out and ruffled his hair, asking, "You must be in 6th grade by now, right? How has it been at school lately? You haven't been bullying any classmates, have you?" "Hey, whether I bully classmates or not is another matter, but brother, stop touching my head, it'll make me not grow taller." Kyongsu brushed away his hand, complaining. Xiamo just smiled and remained silent. Soon, the elevator doors slowly opened. He glanced at the elevator indicator, it was the 9th floor, no mistake. Thus, he and Kyongsu stepped out of the elevator together and pressed the doorbell next to the apartment door. The door slowly opened, revealing their mother's face in the light. She quickly looked surprised. Baewena looked at him. Isn't that Xiamo? Why did you come back so early?" Xiamo scratched the bridge of his nose and explained, "A friend here made plans with me, so I came back from university 2 days early. Just now, I even ran into my little brother on the way back." Hearing this, Baewena put her hands on her hips and glared at Kyongsu. "This rascal, you said you were going to the supermarket downstairs to get some coke, and it took you so long. Can I walk around a bit after buying the drinks?" Kyongsu, looking down, said this a bit guiltily while wiping the corner of his mouth, thinking he had used the disaster dragon's abilities to eliminate the blood scent, hoping it wouldn't be detected. "Speaking of which, how does our third sister manage to remove the scent of blood? She goes out to suck blood every once in a while, yet no one notices." He thought again. "Mom, don't be too strict with them, it's just a walk." Xiamo smiled gently, hugging the visibly annoyed Kyongsu as they walked into the house. He stopped in the familiar living room and suddenly sensed a covert, strange gaze, causing him to suddenly look up and follow the staircase toward the entrance on the second floor. There, a youth stood by the railing of the second-floor staircase, his head lowered, emotionlessly playing with his phone. Xiamo, looking up, blurted out a name. Ming.Yi? While calling his brother's name, he felt it strange. He had clearly sensed someone watching him, and that gaze had lasted a solid 2 seconds. Undoubtedly, with a ninja's intuition, he could feel that it was a stare full of hostility, as if looking at a stranger. But when he looked up, all he saw was Calamity playing on his phone, appearing as if he hadn't even noticed him. At that moment, having heard the noise, Calamity looked up from his phone and glanced downstairs at Xiamo, his expression somewhat surprised. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Brother, when did you get back? Weren't you supposed to come back in a couple of days? Are you fooling me with your phone?" Xiamo, staring expressionlessly at Calamity, met his gaze. At the same time, a thought crossed his mind: his brother seemed somewhat strange. Chapter 10 Enemies on a Narrow Road June 18th, night, inside a duplex apartment. Calamity rested his arms on the railing of the second-floor staircase, leaning forward slightly. While staring at his phone, he kept an eye on his second brother and younger brother as they entered through the door. At this moment, Xiamo, with his arm around Qiangzu's shoulder, walked into the living room. Simultaneously, in Kamini's eyes, their information panels emerged above their heads. Name, Xiamo, age, 20, gender, male, strength, A+, possessing top-tier combat power far surpassing 90% of the world's superhumans, hidden identity, ninja of the Shadow Air Ninja Sect and also the big disciple of the 27th Sect Master, a ninja, my second brother? So, was his insistence on going to college in Zen because it was closer to Shadow Sail Mountain? The entire family was trying to persuade him to change his college preference, but he wouldn't listen to a single word. Seeing this, Kamini let out a sigh of relief. Ninja didn't seem too dangerous. They probably still belonged to a law-abiding and righteous faction. If the family had someone like a serial killer music enthusiast, then he would have to worry about his own safety. Note 1. When a ninja is nearby, always be careful of the shadows around you, as they could appear from them at any moment. Note 2. The Shadow Air Ninja Sect and Disaster Dragon Clan are hereditary archenemies whose war has lasted for hundreds of years. While the Disaster Dragon Clan has now disappeared, the Shadow Air Ninja Sect still believes the descendants of Disaster Dragons possibly remain alive in the world. Therefore, the primary objective of the Ninja Sect is to find all the Disaster Dragon offspring in the world and eradicate them completely. Note 3. The base of the Shadow Air Ninja Sect is located at Shadow Sail Mountain, so, this Ninja Sect and Disaster Dragons are archenemies? Archenemies? While thinking about this, Kamini's brain froze for a second, wondering if he was seeing things, but isn't this guy hugging a Disaster Dragon offspring right now? He glanced again at Xiamo's panel description, and at Qiangzu next to him. Name, Qiangzu, age, 10, gender, male, strength, A+, possessing top-tier combat power far surpassing 90% of the world's superhumans, hidden identity, a juvenile form of the Disaster Dragon offspring. As Kamini grasped what was going on, his mouth almost formed an O shape in astonishment. In his eyes, Xiamo's gesture of hugging Qiangzu turned horrific and glaring, as if beholding something as eldritch as the god Cthulhu. Despite his restraint, Kamini couldn't help the twitch at the corner of his mouth, his eyelids constantly twitching. He thought to himself, second brother, can you open your eyes and see what you're hugging? So the age-old enemies are just buddy-buddy with each other? Tell me, are you a double agent in the ninja sect, or just one of its liberal leftists? Despite struggling to suppress his snarky remarks, Kamini knew that these two were probably unaware of each other's identities, which was why such an absurd situation had arisen. Retreating a 10,000 steps back, Qiangzu might not even know what the ninja sect is. From his birth, he was abandoned in the streets in human form and then adopted by a nearby orphanage institution. It might have been during his growth that he gradually became aware of the peculiarities inherent within himself. Fortunately, his mentality matured faster than ordinary people's, allowing him to hide the fact that he was actually a dragon both in the orphanage and in this family. As an orphan, he hadn't been schooled by a dragon on how to avoid risks, nor would he be told that the Shadow Air Ninja Sect was the greatest nemesis of their disaster-stricken dragon clan. Therefore, Qiangzu was mostly unaware that there was a large group of people in the world, scheming to find him and then slaughter him thoroughly. Compared to these, Kamini admired the alien mother even more, thinking it kind of twisted that she managed to bring together a pair of generational enemies. On his first day arriving at this place, he couldn't figure out how his mother could have given birth to so many children with vastly different abilities and origins. First of all, he and Qiangzu were adopted, so there were no blood relation concerns. The predecessor of this body, Kamini, was an ordinary person, This point was unquestionable, as the traversing Kaminai retained all the memories from before. Kyongsu was different. Baewina probably targeted him for his disaster dragon identity and picked him up from the orphanage to bring him home. Let's rule out those two first. Then, among the other 5 biological siblings in the house, the eldest brother Kienzai was still at university and had not returned home, so his true identity was not known. The second brother Xiamo was a ninja, the sister Baekaiyu was a divine communicator, the eldest sister Baizini was a magic girl, the second sister Baiziling was a vampire. In such a small family, the emergence of such a complex ecological situation surely couldn't be blamed on their father King. He was simply a superpower user, without such a muddled array of genes. So no matter how one thought about it, the problem definitely lay with the mother. An alien spy sneaked onto Earth. If Kaminai wasn't wrong, Baewina must have meddled with her own reproductive system and used King's genes along with other special genes collected on Earth to perform various breeding experiments, resulting in a series of children with disparate bloodline and clan backgrounds. Thinking of it this way made sense. But what was the meaning behind her actions? About this question, Kaminai had only one guess in his mind, and he believed that the accuracy of this guess should be 100%. In order to provide the necessary preliminary investigation details for an attack on Earth by her home planet, Baewina's main task was likely to thoroughly collect detailed information on the various superhuman types on Earth. Otherwise, there was no need for her to have spent so much effort secretly infiltrating Earth for so long. To achieve this goal, she needed to place children with different superhuman characteristics close by to observe, and she had surely stealthily guided these children to use their own methods at home to conceal their abilities, to prevent their father from finding out. Thinking about it, King was the biggest unfortunate soul in the household. He had been active as the superhero King since he was 17, and for the past 30 years, he had helped the authorities solve countless large and small superhuman criminal cases. In recent years, through a series of ruthless measures, he had managed to reduce the crime rate in Huanjing to an unprecedented level. Yet, he had never imagined that the greatest threat to the nation and people he protected could stem from his own unguarded family. It was simply tragically inhumane. So, what was the meaning behind Baewina adopting me, an ordinary person? That was Kaminai's greatest curiosity. Perhaps Baewina also needed a normal human child as a reference point for her other superhuman-type siblings, but with so many ordinary people on Earth, was it necessary to personally adopt one? Chapter 11 The way home. Kaminai felt it strange, but precisely because of this point, Baewina's attention on him should be much less than on the other children in the family. Therefore, he was likely the only person in the family whom Baewina did not know thoroughly. Because Baewina could not possibly guess, just 3 days ago, the one child who had been ordinary for 16 whole years was suddenly replaced by a soul from a parallel world, thereby becoming a player. Hey, now we're looking at a case of spy meets spy. Kaminai felt increasingly that the two of them were fated. Baewina came from an extraterrestrial planet, and he was from a parallel world, both essentially spies lurking on Earth, with overlapping objectives. Baewina aimed to help her mother planet invade Earth, while his goal was to exterminate superhumans. If Baewina's alien species was not counted as superhuman, then Kaminai might have even considered revealing his identity to her once he had enough power, to see if they could join forces. After all, compared to other players, his only advantage and biggest disadvantage was that all around him were superhumans from various forces, none of whom were unimportant within their respective forces. Baewina was a spy from an alien planet, King was a member of the Superhero Roundtable, Baizini was a main member of the Magical Girl Alliance, and Xiamo was the grand disciple of the Ninja Sect Master. For that reason, Kaminai could plan to level up traditionally, boost his strength to a certain level, and then adopt a second identity, exploiting his knowledge of his family members to get closer to them. If this process went smoothly, he would then try to get in touch with the powers behind them, then attempt to blend in, and bide his time. But, sadly, the reality before him directly negated one of Kaminai's ideas. Based on the main tasks listed by the system, Baewina was also fated to be one of the 100 players Earth had to eliminate behind the scenes. And there was likely a time limit to eliminate her before the alien attack on Earth, otherwise, once the alien spacecraft descended on Earth, their troubles would increase considerably. So, collaborating with Baewina was mostly unlikely. Of course, all of this was not something he needed to consider at the moment, since judging from the player panel, his attributes were still not as good as an ordinary teenager's. However, if the game system believed that the players could exterminate superhumans, it would definitely provide them with the conditions to match that belief. As long as he increased his power step by step, he would eventually understand at what level Baewina's power really was. And before he grew strong, his primary task was to ensure that none of his family members noticed anything unusual about him. At this moment, Kaminai leaned on the railing of the second floor, pretending to look at his phone, while secretly observing the panel above Xiaomo's head. Xiaomo, in the ninja sect, must also be among the elite, but his combat power still hadn't exceeded the A rank, stopping at A+. So far, apart from Beiwena, no one else in the family had shown any S-level combat capabilities, which was doubtlessly good news for Kminai. He thought to himself, surely in this family, apart from his brother Kyongzu's terrifying potential, it really was Mom who was the undisputed final boss, since everyone else's ratings fluctuated around A rank. Only Beiwena's combat rating was 3 question marks, perhaps even far exceeding S rank. Minai? Xiaomo suddenly looked up, staring at him with a strange expression for a while, then called out his name. Kminai looked up from his phone, his face showing a surprised expression. So, second brother, why are you back? I had some business here, came back early, Xiaomo said. You didn't even give a heads up. Dad keeps asking me when you and big brother will be back, and so does big sister. Where are they? They all went out, but they should be back soon, Kminai said. It made sense for him to say that, since King had already arrived. The combined forces of Justice Knight Azure Crow, Divine Communicator, Black Wukong, and Magical Girl, Ash should have more than enough power to handle a ghost tree with only A-rank combat power with no suspense. The ghost tree was not very powerful to begin with, at best evenly matched with Beikai Yuwu. Adding Beizini was already pressing, barely scraping by, not to mention the immensely experienced King joining the battle, which directly tipped the scales. At this moment, in a school located on Yindai Commercial Street, a charming figure streaked through the deep night sky, descended from the heavens with the umbrella in hand, and landed on the rooftop of this abandoned elementary school. This school, which had closed 10 years earlier, served as the base for all the magic girls in Huanjing. Many of China's magic girls had visited this school, gathering in the empty classrooms to discuss their adventures, occasionally complaining about how uncomfortable their dresses were to wear and how their magic weapons were clumsy to use. Some of them, who fought relying on their contracted beasts, often publicly punished their beasts right in the classroom, passionately declaring how these creatures had tricked them from being ordinary young girls into magic girls endlessly busy with missions. When they became emotional, they'd shed tears and murmur, "What's the difference between being tricked into becoming a magic girl and being duped into studying civil engineering?" Since magic girls generally skewed younger in age, many of them absolutely detested the word school. They had strongly resisted using this school as their base at first, but, for convenience's sake, this historic base was still in use until now. At such a late hour, the abandoned school was naturally empty, providing a convenient place to shed their magic dresses. Thus, magical girl Ash thought of this place immediately after detaching from her battle. The instant her toes touched the rooftop, her clothes fell away like an invisible gauze to the ground, disappearing and replaced by her usual school uniform. Meanwhile, the battle umbrella called Cinderella in her hand also transformed into a plain, folding black umbrella. Ah, chew. Beizini folded her umbrella while sneezing in the cold wind. She stretched out a finger to rub her nose and stamped her feet hard, mumbling incessantly. Damn it. It's so late, I haven't bathed yet, and I didn't catch that damn monkey. It's infuriating. And that annoying Kingya, just a puppet for the officials, I feel sick just seeing him. She still remembered the last time she encountered Kingya. This bizarre crow man had followed her all across half of Huanjing, and she had exhausted every trick in the book to finally shake him off. She actually knew why Kingya followed her. After all, being directly subordinate to the officials, they naturally tasked him with thoroughly investigating the backgrounds of these unknown vigilantes. But every time she thought about it, Beizini first felt creeped out, followed by indignation, thinking, aren't we all fighting criminals? How does tagging along with the officials suddenly make one superior? I'm done. If I don't go home soon, my phone will be blown up by my mother. Beizini hugged her shoulders with her left hand and took out her mobile phone from her school uniform pocket with her right. The sight of multiple missed call notifications from mother made her shiver. She put away her phone, lightly clicked her tongue, and entered the stairwell from the rooftop door, clomping noisily downwards. Just then, a shaft of moonlight brushed through the window at the stairwell entrance, casting her face onto her phone screen. Oh, I almost forgot to change back my face. Beizini got the shivers and hurriedly pulled out a vintage folding mirror from the pocket of her school jacket. This magic mirror was a gift from her mentor, magical girl, Lai. As long as she concentrated, by imagining her desired appearance while looking into the magic mirror, her features would instantly shift. Beizini never failed, she always imagined her face a few years older, pairing it with a gothic dress and a complementing British-style makeup ensemble. That way, no one would recognize her. Beizini looked into the mirror until her face reverted to its original appearance, only then did she breathe a sigh of relief. She put away the magic mirror, raised her head, and following the streak of moonlight overhead, looked out the window from the stairwell entrance. Mentor, are you doing okay over there in London? She murmured softly, her pupils reflecting the sky. The moon played hide-and-seek in the clouds, on a mackerel sky night, with wave-like cloud patterns filling the deep blue night sky. Chapter 12 Each with their own thoughts. June 18th, night, Huanjing, wine-reflecting coast, inside an old lighthouse at a corner of the coast. Divine Communicator, Black Wukong stood on the observation deck, silently gazing at the distant horizon. After a long while, he slowly removed the mask covering his face, taking off his metallic silver wine coat. Like a goldfish surfacing for air, Beikaiyu closed her eyes and gently took a breath. When she opened her eyes again, her pupils were still as bright as a turbid fire burning. She removed the hood on her head, and her long hair tied behind cascaded down immediately. Then, she raised her right hand and stroked over her eyes. Soon, the crimson in her pupils, like a tiny flame, flickered and extinguished, leaving only darkness. Beikaiyu's eyes drooped, and it took a long while for the burning sensation in her eyes to ease slightly. She took a deep breath, lifted her face, and remained silent for a while outside the observation deck. Under the moonlight, waves sparkled as they continuously lapped against the shore, breaking into white foam, rustling loudly. It really is her. In the empty exhibition room, she muttered softly. The ability Eyes of Golden Flame brought by the Divine Path Sun Wukong allowed her to see through all illusion techniques and illusions. Perhaps the Eyes of Golden Flame couldn't penetrate to see who was behind a mask, but when she cast her gaze on someone who had altered their appearance through magic or deception, she could definitely see their true form. Therefore, through these eyes, Beikaiyu saw the true face of Magic Girl Ash clearly. It was an incredibly familiar face. A face she had known since childhood, a face that had been in her memory for over a decade, a face that kept growing but still was affectionately familiar. She knew what this face looked like as a child, had seen it cry, pout, but she had never seen it show her a cold expression before. Zini, why is it you? With her shoulders hugged, Beikaiyu's gaze shifted as she murmured softly. Does anyone else in the family know her identity? She shook her head. No, it should be only me who knows. Should I tell Mom and Dad about this? No, that would easily expose my own identity too, but letting her continue like this could easily lead to trouble. Beikaiyu slightly tilted her head, her fingers brushing her jaw, continuously weighing in her mind. The repeated calls of sister from Beizini still echoed in her ears, contrasting with the stern face of Magic Girl Ash, leaving Beikaiyu somewhat bewildered. She couldn't understand why Beizini had become a magic girl so quietly, without anyone at home knowing. The situation had arisen so suddenly that it caught her off guard. In fact, Beikaiyu had already seen through with Eyes of Golden Flame that the so-called Magic Girl Ash was Beizini during their last encounter. At that time, Beizini was fighting a criminal, and to keep her from being hurt, Beikaiyu had almost instinctively summoned a somersault cloud and forcefully dragged her away from the battlefield. However, what she didn't expect was that Beizini would hold a grudge against her for a long time because of the instinctive action she made, even deliberately seeking her out this time. In Beizini's eyes, this so-called Black Wukong simply seemed to be making trouble out of nothing. She was fighting well when suddenly she was whisked tens of thousands of miles away by a cloud, which would annoy anyone. Now as Beikaiyu recalled, not treating her as Beizini, but as Magic Girl Ash, her ability was indeed more than sufficient to handle that criminal. But seeing her for the first time, she inevitably viewed her as that vulnerable little girl and instinctively wanted to whisk her away from danger, hence the meddling. If it had not been so, Beizini wouldn't have harbored resentment towards her, endlessly chasing after her. Never mind, I should head home first. Beikaiyu gently shook her head, no longer speculating on Beizini's thoughts, but instead put on a sports jacket from the table and wore a baseball cap. After waiting for a while at a bus stop on the coastal highway, she boarded the last bus, gazing out the window at the brightly lit city. Everything seemed so elusive, like a mirage. Soon, the bus stopped at its station on Old Jingmei Street. As soon as she got off, she saw a familiar figure next to the station. King, who hadn't returned home yet, was sitting on a public bench next to the supermarket, with a cigarette dangling from his mouth, a pack of cigarettes and a lighter in his hand. Seeing Beikaiyu, King did not speak, but just calmly sat there, squeezing his eyebrows at his daughter. Dad, have you been smoking here for an hour? Beikaiyu asked him with a chuckle, her arms folded. No, after buying the cigarettes, I went for a walk. As he spoke, King bowing his head near the lighter, clicked it and lit the cigarette hanging from his mouth, and asked with a muffled voice, did you have fun with your friends? It was okay, just went shopping and then came back. Beikaiyu tilted her head and added, pretty boring. Then we should head home, otherwise your mom is going to get mad. Yeah. The two left the supermarket, took the elevator to the 9th floor of the duplex building. As King unlocked the door, looking through the foyer, He could see the children all gathered around the large TV in the living room watching a movie. Chapter 12, each with their own thoughts too. Oh, Zhao Mo is back too? He had a cigarette in his mouth and looked surprised as his eyes fixed on the tall, slender figure in the living room. Bei Kaiyu was also surprised, thinking to herself, didn't Minai say that elder brother would come back in a couple of days? How come he's home already? Upon hearing the voice, Xiamo turned his head toward King and said, Dad, I came back early because I had some things to take care of. He then glanced at Bei Kaiyu. Why did you come back so late? Went out with friends. Bei Kaiyu replied, Brother, are you staying here the entire summer vacation? Yeah, I don't have much going on this summer, just staying at home, Xiamo said, but what about you? You're going to be in senior year next semester, feeling the pressure? Not really, just keeping a normal mindset, Bei Kaiyu said. Sitting on the couch and munching on chips, Kuminai spoke up, she goes out to have fun every day, doesn't even need to review, and still always in the top 10 of our grade, elder brother, you don't have to worry about her. What about you? Xiamo said, looking at Kuminai, I heard your grades have dropped dramatically recently. Don't mess up and end up unable to get into a first-year university. Kuminai chuckled, then I'll definitely follow your lead, scoring over 600 points, not going for a 985 university, but instead heading to Zen to attend an ordinary first-year university. You nearly drove Mom and Dad mad. Though he said this, he knew that Xiamo did so to attend a university closer to Shadow Sail Mountain, making it easier to connect with the ninja sect. Beizini popped her head over the back of the sofa and shouted, Dad, emergency. The TV membership is about to expire, recharge it quickly. Got it, I'll recharge it soon, just keep watching for now. King said in annoyance, still with a cigarette in his mouth, as he walked upstairs. Bei Kaiyu closed the door, her eyes constantly on Beizini. She was watching a movie with Bei Xiling, Qiangzu, Xiamo, and Kuminai, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It was a usual scene. Beizini loved sticking next to Kuminai, who had been her playmate since childhood, apart from Bei Xiling. Does Xiling know that Zhaomi is a magic girl? Bei Kaiyu thought. And what about Minai? Maybe I should talk to them about it, but what if they don't know? With that thought, she fixed her gaze on Kuminai. As usual, while everyone else watched the movie, he was engrossed in his phone, yawning from time to time. Highly unlikely, Bei Kaiyu shook her head. Taking a sip of boiled water, Xiamo looked at her, why are you standing at the door? Why not join us for the movie? You guys go ahead, I'll join you after my shower. Bei Kaiyu said, stripping off her sneakers and slipping on sandals, she moved toward the staircase. Why come, don't you have school tomorrow? Beiwina had just come downstairs, grumbling, a bunch of little brats, always hiding behind your elder brother, thinking you don't have to sleep because Zhao Mo is home? Bei Kaiyu brushed past her, responding helplessly, alright, Mom, elder brother is back, and we are happy about it. What's wrong with staying up a bit late? Beiwina glared at her, you still talk back, especially you and Minai who are high school students. You should sleep when it's time to sleep, don't think you don't have to study just because summer vacation is coming soon. Bei Kaiyu smiled, choosing not to retort further. Walking up the stairs, an idea suddenly struck her, what if she used eyes of golden flame to scan every single person in the house? Would it be like the moment she looked at magical girl Ash, as if her entire worldview was turned upside down? With that thought, she stopped her steps and silently stood in the shadow on the stairway, turning to look at the side profiles of her family. It was evident, Kuminai had no interest in the movie and was already thinking of sneaking out, but Beizini blocked him, chattering about something. Qiangzu and elder brother Xiamo were discussing his school tyrant tales. Bei Xiling was silent, her red pupils quietly reflecting the movie's screen. Despite everyone growing up, every person was still the same as in her memories. Like every year and each summer vacation to date, everyone gathered in front of the TV, sitting on the sofa, inseparable, without any barriers, just sharing joy and laughter. Even in a chaotic era, it was an ordinary, happy family. For Bei Kaiyu, returning home after fighting fiercely outside always felt like returning to a tranquil harbor. She didn't want to break the status quo. At that thought, Bei Kaiyu silently dismissed the idea of discussing the matter of Beizini with her parents, or her other siblings. After all, she too harbored her own secrets. Since she didn't wish to reveal her own identity to her family, Beizini surely felt the same. Why bother then? Beizini was no longer a child, she knew what she was doing. Just like me 2 years ago, I thought I was invincible after gaining immense power beyond ordinary humans and could not help wanting to do something. We are all the same. Bei Kaiyu murmured to herself, her gaze lingering on Beizini for a second before she moved towards the stairs. At that moment, Kuminai, seated on the sofa, stealthily glanced at her retreating figure, then quickly averted his gaze. Look, Look, I really can't stay awake," he said languidly, his eyelids almost closing. "Come on, bro, just stay up with me for this one last part. We'll watch the last part tomorrow." Baizini pulled on his shoulder again, her eyes fixed on the TV, pleading with her mouth. Kuminai shrugged, thinking to himself that compared to her throwing tantrums in front of him, the so-called Cinderella parasol held to his neck might be a bit more persuasive. If he hadn't seen the other side of Baizini, where she would call him brother only when she needed something, he might actually believe that her sister was just clingy. Perhaps, Baizini was just using him, an ordinary human, as a tool to conceal her identity at home. Thinking about it, he truly was a prime example of a tool among tools. "Wait for your elder sister to finish her bath, she'll come and watch with you. I'm out." Having said that, Kuminai had already risen from the sofa. In fact, it wasn't that he didn't have time to watch a movie with them, but he realized that tonight, his second brother Kusagakure was often quietly observing him. The reason was unclear, but it seemed like he had become suspicious of him. But why? As Kuminai walked up the stairs, he thought to himself, "I shouldn't have given away any clues, and I tried my best to act like the original owner of this body. Could a ninja read minds, knowing that his brother had been replaced by me? Even more absurdly, does he think I'm the Calamity Dragon? Please, open your eyes and look, the dragon you're looking for is sitting right next to you. It's that bratty 6th grader, you know." Kuminai was filled with doubts, knowing it would be better to keep his distance from Kusagakure for now, and to be careful when alone. According to the system, a ninja could merge into shadows, so he had to always beware of the shadows in the room, lest his second brother was hiding in the shadows, secretly watching him. It's really like dealing with a ghost. Kuminai got goosebumps, silently complaining to himself as he stepped onto the second floor, took a few steps into his room, and locked the door. He propped one hand on his neck and lay on the bed, checking the date on his phone. Today was June 18th. He then looked up the vacation dates for several schools. Kyongsu's elementary school still had 3 more days before summer vacation, Baizini and Baizini's middle school had 1 more day, Kuminai's high school, where he and Baikaiyu studied, had 2 more days. His second brother's university had already ended for the summer and he had returned home early today. As for his eldest brother, it might take another 2 days for him to return. So far, his eldest brother Kienzai was the only one whose details Kuminai did not yet fully understand. No matter what, this summer vacation was bound to be lively. Kuminai looked at the ceiling spotted with a few gamboge stains, thinking to himself. First, he needed to locate other players in the city and establish a quiet connection with them, to arrange a time to play some instances together, and quickly elevate his levels and powers. Second, he had to make sure his player identity did not get exposed at home, because otherwise, any random family member would be able to mince him up and feed him to the pigs. Chapter 13, Instance unlocked. Because his second brother Kusagakure had returned home and seemed to take an unusual interest in him, Kuminai didn't dare make any careless moves even when he was alone in his room, for fear of inadvertently revealing any information detrimental to himself. After all, according to the intelligence provided by the system, his brother Kusagakure was not only an A+ level superhuman but also happened to be a ninja, a profession skilled in gathering intelligence and scouting enemy situations, not to mention the extremely buggy ability of phasing into shadows, which was nearly impossible to guard against. Kuminai knew that as long as Kusagakure was at home, in the dead of night, there might always be a pair of eyes observing him from some shadow in the room, under the wardrobe, the shadow cast on the desk by the lamp, or even in the silhouette his own back projected onto the bed behind him. Just imagining the scene in his mind was enough to make Kuminai's scalp tingle, let alone experiencing it firsthand. So he secretly decided that he should try not to burn the midnight oil this summer vacation. Having nothing pressing tonight, Kuminai washed up and went to bed early. A silent night passed. When Kuminai opened his eyes again, he yawned gently and, aided by the dim light coming through the window, glanced at the clock on the wall. It was already 6 in the morning. He didn't know if anything had happened last night, but he had slept soundly anyway. The ancients spoke of a beheading meal, but at least he had had his beheading sleep, which should be enough for now, regardless of how dear the situation might become later. What caught his eye was a little different from yesterday. Kuminai could now see an email icon in the upper right corner of his field of vision. Kuminai raised an eyebrow, took a sip of water from his cup, and picked up a book from beside his bed. Pretending to flip through it, he tried tapping the icon with his finger. The moment his fingertip touched the icon, a ding sounded unexpectedly in his ear, and one email after another popped up. Notification Email 1, functions such as daily tasks, player panel, player mall, communication, and dungeon atlas are now open all day. Every city in the world is scattered with randomly generated instances. The daily limit for instance challenge attempts is 1. Please actively search for instances scattered throughout the city. So far, the instance challenge progress in Huanjing City is 0 out of 100. Not a single instance has been conquered. Does every city have 100 instances? Would that mean players who spawn in smaller cities would find instances at a much higher efficiency than those in larger cities? Or perhaps, there are more instances distributed in larger cities than in smaller ones? Kaminai pondered for a moment, his finger sliding over this email. Meanwhile, 6 new icons appeared in the upper right corner of his vision, lined up in a vertical row beneath the email icon. He glanced at them, and next to the icons, a line of tiny text emerged, explaining the functions they represented, which were mall, knapsack, personal panel, taskbar, dungeon detector, and communication list. As the icons materialized, the second email unfolded before his eyes. Notification Email 2, Halloween Event Dungeon Advance Notice. On October 31st of this year, traveling to Huanjing Happy Valley Amusement Park will open a dungeon. Note, this email will only be received by players who are in Huanjing City, China. While Kaminai was reading the second email, a song with a spooky atmosphere suddenly sounded in his ear. He raised an eyebrow, recalling that he had heard this song before, Thriller, by Michael Jackson, which indeed could be considered a symbolic song for Halloween. A Halloween instance, huh? It must be designed with a festive atmosphere. Sounds downright spooky, Kaminai thought. But a dungeon that won't open until 4 months from now and you're starting the teasers already, afraid we'll forget and miss out on your surprises, huh? With that thought, he emotionlessly swiped away the email, only to be met with another of the same format. Notification Email 3, Spring Festival Instance Advance Teaser. On January 25th of next year, travel to Winter City Avenue in Huanjing City to activate the instance. Great, you're previewing all the way into next year. I'd be lucky to survive this summer and might need to light incense and pray. By this time next year, the grass on my grave could be as tall as me. Grumbling in his mind, Kaminai placed the cup on the bedside table and swiped past the email. His expression slightly changed as he saw the content of the next email. Notification Email 4 Death Notice. Last night, players born in New York, United States, Wilmer Hogue and Sean Cameron, were captured by an Abnormal Regulation Bureau S-level enforcer Kianzai and tortured to death. In their final moments, these two players committed some despicable acts. They confessed all known intelligence regarding players. The Anomaly Control Bureau has now transferred this intelligence to the organization's Superdimensional Supervision Bureau, in charge of matters related to transmigrators. The concept of players will gradually spread within superhuman forces, and they will learn that the mission of players is to exterminate superhumans. All surviving players must be extremely cautious of inspections by these two organizations and avoid arousing suspicion amongst the surrounding superhumans. Current number of surviving players, 97 out of 100. Kaminai was stunned. But you two Americans, just dying was not enough, had to screw over your teammates before you went, thinking our undercover work wasn't hard enough, huh? He thought. He had originally believed the script of this game was, if we're not strong enough, just lay low and endure, at worst endure a few days, then rely on the game system to grow stronger and suddenly rise up to overturn this world. Reality, however, immediately slapped him hard, and this slap came with a critical hit, damage X2. Yes, he never expected that. Just on the 4th day, 3 players were already dead, including the 2 Americans, who not only died but had turned traitor just before. Both of you gave up the word players, so what's the point in playing anymore? Who knows what means the Superdimensional Supervision Bureau, specifically targeting transmigrators, will use to single us out from the crowd. Damn it, I'm already starting in hell, and you guys want to fuel the fire of my hellish start, thinking it's not burning fiercely enough, wanting me to go straight to heaven, is that it? Kaminai struggled to keep his composure and took a deep breath. On one hand, he was dismayed by how incredibly useless his teammates were. Despite the dire situation, he had managed to stay alive, but did these 2 Americans have no acting skills at all? On the other hand, he was also taken aback by the high efficiency of the Anomaly Control Bureau. What had those 2 players done to get themselves targeted? Thinking this, Kaminai took another look at the email and realized he had overlooked a name, the so-called Abnormal Regulation Bureau S-level enforcer who had captured the 2 players mentioned in the system email. The enforcer's name was Kianzai. Chapter 14, Wheel of Fortune Rewards. Notification Email 4, Death Notice. Last night, players born in New York, United States, Wilmer Hogue and Sean Cameron, were captured by the S-level executor Kianzai of the Anomaly Control Bureau and tortured to death. Wait a minute, why does the name of this executor look so familiar? Kaminai stared at the name Kianzai on the email for 2 or 3 seconds before he finally came to his senses, realizing that he had been focusing on the wrong thing from the start. The point was not the 2 American players who were captured, but the name of the person who had caught them. The next second, he cursed inwardly, belatedly conscious of the fact. Damn it, isn't that my older brother? Kianzai, the eldest son at home, 21 years old this year. As far as Kaminai could recall, this person had been frighteningly excellent since childhood and was currently attending university in Kafan, China. At this thought, Kaminai wanted to tell himself that his big brother was studying in China, and the executor in the report was just in New York, United States, probably just someone with the same name. But quickly, he metaphorically slapped himself, forcing the thought of escaping reality out of his mind. Please, what are the odds? How many people in China would have such a tongue-twisting name as Qianzai, not to mention among those of Chinese descent? Kaminai massaged his forehead for 2 seconds and let out a sigh. He was 99% certain that the S-level executor affiliated with the Anomaly Control Bureau mentioned in the email was his big brother. He had been curious why his brother, despite being on university vacation, had not yet returned home. Now the truth had been laid bare in a way he least wanted to hear. It turned out Qianzai was acting as a dog for the Anomaly Control Bureau, busy traveling around the world carrying out missions. And just yesterday, he had unfortunately captured 2 players. Now, Kaminai finally saw the full picture of this family. Indeed, just as he had predicted, there wasn't a single normal person in this family. Moreover, his eldest brother was a freak among freaks. In just a few days, he had captured players lurking in New York. No matter how Qianzai had managed to capture those 2 players, it was undoubtedly a bolt from the blue for Kaminai. My spawn point design is really awesome, isn't it? Maybe I should find a pistol and shoot myself in the head before Big Brother comes home, just to check if this game has a remake function. Kaminai thought to himself cheerfully as he put down the book he had been using as a disguise. The reason he had kept the book up to his face was that he was worried his second brother, Xiamo, might be observing him from some shadow in the room at this very moment, looking for something odd about him. He got out of bed, put on his shoes, cleaned up in the bathroom, then looked back to see the second-floor room still tightly shut, without any sign of life. All his siblings were lazy dogs, getting up at 6 was as good as eating shit to them, so Kaminai didn't bother waking them up. Before leaving the house, Kaminai made sure to take his backpack with him. King and Baywen tended to get up late and had no time to prepare breakfast, so they usually gave their children money for breakfast and lunch the night before. Kaminai planned to stop at a roadside stall on the way to school to deal with breakfast. After leaving the house, he took the elevator down to the ground floor. As the elevator doors opened, his gaze through the lobby's entrance fell upon the desolate street outside. Each shop store was firmly shut, only the supermarket across the street remained open, with the electronic sign 77 flickering on and off in the morning light with its neon glow. Looking up, he saw a slightly oppressive dark blue sky, cloudless. Fortunately, the air was still relatively fresh in the early morning. Can I really survive this? I guess I just have to take it one step at a time. Muttering softly to himself, Kaminai walked along the deserted street, pretending to look at his phone and opening the taskbar. Daily Task 1, run 3,000 meters in the morning. This task must be completed before 8 a.m. Reward for this task, a chance to spin a lucky draw wheel. Daily Task 2, do 100 push-ups. Task reward, receive 1 attribute point to allocate freely. Daily Mission 3, none. Each day there is a 10% chance to refresh a special daily mission. Completing this mission will yield richer rewards than ordinary daily missions. Note, daily missions will refresh at 0:00 the following day. Please aim to finish the missions before the time limit ends. After reading the mission details, Kaminai left his backpack with the supermarket owner and started running along the streets of the old Jingmei district. He ran and ran, sprinting without holding back, until the sky changed from a dark blue to pure white and his school uniform was drenched in sweat. Only then did he stop. Kaminai placed his hands on his slightly bent knees and bent over, gasping for breath. After a while, he lifted his head from his sweat-drenched forehead and looked at the mission prompt floating before his eyes. You have completed Daily Mission 1 and have earned an opportunity to spin the prize wheel. Would you like to spin it now? Spin it. As his words fell, a round prize wheel slowly unfolded before his eyes, with intersecting red lines dividing it into 6 sectors, each marked with text and icons. From Sector 1 to 6, the rewards are as follows. 1. C-Class Weapon, Electromagnetic Pulse Pistol, ammunition can be purchased in the mall. 2. 500 mall coins, can be used to purchase items in the player's mall. 3. 1 attribute point to allocate freely. 4. Unique item, Spider-Man's web shooter, derived from the superhero franchise in the second parallel universe Spider-Man. 5. B-Class item, Firearms Mastery Card. 6. Thank you for participating. Kaminai walked forward while checking each sector's reward on the prize wheel. Since he wasn't familiar with the game's items, he naturally didn't know which reward was the best. He only knew that if it landed on the 6th reward, he'd seriously have to check if the system had a remake function. Without hesitation, he immediately pressed the start wheel button below the prize wheel. The prize wheel spun like a windmill, the top pointer remaining stationary. Ultimately, the segment it landed on was the 4th sector. Congratulations, you have obtained the prize from the 4th sector. Unique item, Spider-Man's web shooter. Item has been added to your inventory. Open the inventory to check. Kaminai raised an eyebrow. Nice stuff, but my current physical fitness probably won't cut it, might have to put it on ice for a while. At that moment, he suddenly stopped in his tracks and turned his head, only to see a huge panel materializing above an abandoned train station in front of him. Congratulations, you have discovered the 7th instance of Huanjing City, which has been recorded in your dungeon atlas. You can open the atlas at any time to check. Instance name, Crazy Train Station. Instance location, Old Jingmei District, Abandoned Train Station. Instance difficulty, F class, recommended for players below level 10 to form a team. Chapter 15 Spider Web Device. The entirety of Huanjing only has a total of 100 instances, and I just happened to stumble upon one just by walking around. Seems like my luck isn't too bad, thought Minai, looking up at the instance panel above the abandoned train station. The panel was as big as a cinema screen, embedded in reality, which undeniably created a surreal visual impact that was hard to miss. If every instance panel was this big, then logically, even if there weren't many players in Huanjing, each one could still find several instances. He didn't dare enter an instance alone, fearing that once in, he might not come out again. Better to wait and contact other players in the city and form a team before entering. With this thought, Minai withdrew his gaze and glanced at the list of daily tasks. Daily Task 1, run 3,000 meters, completed. Daily Task 2, do 100 push-ups, uncompleted. Current, 0 out of 100. Reward, 1 attribute point to be assigned freely. The next task's reward is an attribute point. Huh? Minai thought, as he opened his personal panel. Player level, level 1, player experience points, 0 points out of 500 points, can be obtained via instances, tasks, killing superhumans, etc. Player attributes, physical fitness, 9 points, neurological reaction, 9 points, mental strength, 10 points. Below are the attribute standards for different levels of humans. Normal adolescents, 13 points, normal adults, 20 points, F-level superhumans outstanding attribute, 30 to 60 points, E-level superhumans outstanding attribute, 60 to 100 points, D-level superhumans outstanding attribute, 100 to 140 points, C-level superhumans outstanding attribute, 140 to 180 points, B-level superhumans outstanding attribute, 180 to 250 points, A-level superhumans outstanding attribute, 250 to 400 points. Minai raised an eyebrow, doing some quick calculations. Based on these calculations, Beizini could beat 250 of me, Beikaiyu could beat 300 of me, Dad could beat 400 of me, Mom could beat at least 500 of me. In that moment, he felt genuinely thankful to God from the bottom of his heart, for having the honor to be born into this family and becoming an indispensable part of it, as a unit of measurement for combat power. Player abilities, firearms proficiency not yet activated, lockpicking expertise not yet activated. Open abilities list to view all your ability details. Player skills, none. Each player can equip up to 10 skills, and can replace skills in the skill slot after it is filled. Kmenai clicked the close button on the panel and headed towards the supermarket where his backpack was stored, pondering along the way. Although the attribute point given by the daily task doesn't seem effective for now, it will be useful as it accumulates. 1 a day adds up to 365 points a year. If they are all added to physical fitness, then I'd nearly be a superhuman whose strength is an A grade. Logically, by the time, it shouldn't be a problem to smash a magic girl with one punch. Not to mention, I should also be able to gain attribute points by leveling up or entering instances. However, my current physical fitness is really pitiful, darn it, only 9 points, a normal teenager has 13 points, that's a whole 4 points lower. Doing 100 push-ups in a row would definitely be hopeless, I might even pass out. When I get to school, I'll do a few during the breaks, that should roughly add up by the end of the day. Walking absent-mindedly, Kmenai soon arrived at the supermarket at the entrance to his home. He retrieved his stored backpack from the owner and slung it over his shoulder. He checked his phone, and it was already 7 o'clock. "Young man, I haven't seen you go for a morning run before," the owner asked. "The world is so dangerous nowadays, better to work out vigorously and strive to smash a magic girl with one punch." Saying this, Kmenai took a pineapple bun and a bottle of oat milk from the supermarket's cabinet, held them in his hand, and paid by scanning a code. "You don't say? I encountered a superhuman in the Western District before, and it was a magic girl who saved my life. She used an umbrella as a gun, and she was so impressive that both my spouse and I were stunned. On the way back, my spouse and I discussed on the bus about these magic girls, and this one with the umbrella was the most delicate looking. the owner said, laughing. He picked up a folding fan and fanned his face with it. Kuminai laughed along, thinking to himself that Baizini not only appealed to both genders but also didn't spare the elderly, proving that in this era, the charm of magic girls is indeed more trendy than that of traditional celebrities. Not only do they have the underage buff, but those who become magic girls are generally good-looking. Combined with their strong ability to protect the people, their appearance alone comes with a dazzling filter, making them hard not to be popular. Even the past idol agencies are no longer promoting idols. Perceptive agents have promptly aligned themselves with some not-so-serious superheroes or magic girls. With a little repackaging and some purchased online traffic, becoming an overnight sensation on the internet is no difficult feat. Those who still stick to the old idol routine are swimming against the current, attracting few followers, becoming the outcasts of the era. You're not a fan of hers, are you? While he spoke, Kuminai tore open the package of the bread and glanced at the owner. I've always seen her videos on TikTok. Really? My classmates say that these magic girls never bathe, wearing the same outfit every day, which is really bad luck. Whenever we see them, we immediately block, unfollow, and report them. Time to go to school, see you later, boss. Kuminai took a bite of the pineapple bun, casually maligning Baizini's reputation, and then left the supermarket with his backpack, heading towards Hwanjing Third High School. His older sister, Beikai Yuwu, also attended this high school, although they were a grade apart. Once this summer vacation was over, one would be in the second year, and the other in the third year of high school. The academic pressure was indescribable. Luckily, Kuminai had good grades in his past life and handled it like a fish in water. On his way to school, he clicked on the knapsack icon in the upper right corner of his vision. This thing was like a backpack in an online game, used for storing equipment and materials. Upon opening it, he saw a total of 50 slots in the knapsack panel, with 49 of them empty except for the first slot, which held an item. The only item in the knapsack was a web shooter he won from a spin-a-wheel lottery, from the well-known movie Spider-Man in Another Parallel World. Kuminai had looked this up on his first day here, because this world already had superheroes. Most superhero movies had become documentaries or biographical movies, hence there were no such fictional characters as Spider-Man, Batman, or Superman. Instead, there were superpower users, mutants, magic girls, or characters adapted based on their images who had really existed in history. Thus, he guessed that when people from this world see him pull out a web shooter, their first reaction would probably be "What on earth is this?" rather than asking with a smile, "Are you cosplaying Spider-Man?" Chapter 16 Contact list in the grid of the travel panel, the item icon for the web shooter resembled a watch. A touch of the finger on the icon instantly popped up a series of small options. Kuminai sipped some oat milk and clicked on the View Item Description option, and a panel the size of a palm appeared before his eyes. Equipment name, web shooter, equipment strength, B grade. This equipment can be modified and enhanced by betting mall coins. Rarity, unique, only one piece. Equipment description, a prop used by the protagonist Peter Parker in the famous superhero work from Parallel World Number 2, Spider-Man. Beneath the description was a top view of the item, and players could move the perspective by sliding their finger to get a comprehensive view of the equipment's appearance. Kuminai was already familiar with this, but he still took a quick look. The web shooter's appearance resembled a metal wrist guard, the difference being that it had a display the size of a watch on top. Overall it was lightweight and sturdy, designed with a strong sense of technology. According to the description, the display could be used to check the time under normal conditions, but during battle, it could be used to check the remaining amount of webbing. Players could use the Appearance Settings option below to adjust the color of the web shooter. According to the system settings, there were two color schemes to choose from. One was black, and the other was a mix of red and blue, seemingly generated based on the classic color scheme of the Spider-Man costume. Moreover, they could also change the activation conditions of the web shooter through the Trigger Mechanism Adjustment option, with several conditions available to choose from, generally involving a special pressing gesture. Kuminai couldn't be bothered to fuss over it and directly chose a gesture closest to that from the film Spider-Man as the trigger condition, mainly as a tribute to the classic. A few videos were placed in the introduction panel, demonstrating how to use this equipment. The protagonist in each video was Spider-Man himself, using the web shooter to shoot out webbing, grabbing it to swing between skyscrapers, using the web shooter to bind the limbs of villains with webs, and using the shot web to stick to a car, grabbing the webbing and tossing the car towards the villains. All these kinds of usage methods were available, as if fearing that players wouldn't learn how to use this gadget. Besides, this equipment could be upgraded and strengthened, not remaining static. According to the item's description, by spending enough mall coins, the web shooter could be modified in many ways, such as increasing the maximum capacity of webbing, enhancing the toughness of the webbing, adding neurotoxicity or electric shock effects to the shot webbing, and so on. What bothered Kminai more was that the webbing fluid needed for the shooter, once depleted, had to be purchased in the player's mall using mall coins. But he still didn't know how to obtain mall coins. Would daily tasks refresh them? Or did players need to play instances, and currently, the game system had not provided any rewards for instances. Anyway, I'll find an open space after school to try out this thing. Kminai finished the last sip of oat milk through a straw, casually tossed it into a roadside trash bin, and exited the travel panel. He then clicked on the friend's communication icon in the upper right corner of his vision. Rows of text entered his pupils. Among 100 players, your serial number is number 007, and the serial numbers of the 3 deceased players are number 093, Wilmer Hogue, number 095, Sean Cameron, number 023, Amemi Kazuko. According to system detection, the players currently in China, Huanjing with you total 3, their codes respectively are, number 039, number 035, number 032. If you do not want other players to know your real name, you can choose to create a virtual ID the first time you enter the friends communication list. Would you like to create an ID, or communicate with other players under your real name? Isn't this obvious? Kminai blurted out, create. Please enter your ID on the panel. This ID cannot be changed, and other players will see this ID when they communicate with you in the communication list. Kminai raised his eyebrows, walked into a deserted alley, and almost instantly thought of the ID failed man, so he immediately typed it into the panel and submitted it. This was a homophone for Spider-Man, which he slapped onto the keyboard in a flash. Are you sure you want to use failed man as your ID going forward? Confirm. Kminai thought to himself, could he not fail since he was surrounded by 8 superhumans right from the start, all of whom were tough guys, which was no different from being in prison. Welcome to the friends communication list, failed man. Your initial avatar is set to Mario. There are currently no friends in your list. Players must interact in person to add each other as friends. However, players in the same city can create a temporary discussion group before they become friends. Would you like to initiate a discussion group to include other players from the city? Kminai bit off the last piece of bread and summoned a command. Initiate. Discussion group created successfully. Other city players have been added to the group. All players can leave at any time. You can mentally input and proofread text without needing to type. A neutral notification tone sounded, and a chat panel appeared in front of him. It was very user-friendly, pretty much like the group chat UI on WeChat. Kminai clicked on group chat list and glanced at the other members of the discussion group. Everyone had registered their IDs by then, no one was using their real names. The avatars were all default ones, Mario. After all, since they were using fake IDs, surely no one would upload a selfie as their avatar, right? The IDs of the 3 people were Fanguan, Good Juzipi, and Undefined Dream. He thought to himself, why are these IDs so abstract? Could they have randomly mashed the keyboard to create them? Especially the last one, it's too unconventional. Kminai tried inputting text with his mind, and clicked send. Failed man, hello, anyone up for teaming up to run an instance? No response. Failed man, where are your starting points? Are there many superhumans at home? Still no response. Kminai had to get serious. He pushed himself to use his short essay writing skills, input, and send. Failed man, how about this, let's take turns speaking, okay? Failed man, if superhumans aren't extinct in a year, we will be, stop hesitating. In this tense period, we are a community of fate, got it? After sending this, no one in the discussion group still paid him any attention. Kminai, expressionless, typed a new line in the chat box, if no one responds, your horses won't escape unscathed. Ready to fire, his finger was about to send it. But just then, suddenly a chat notification sound came into his ears. Finally, someone noticed him. He had never found the ding sound so pleasant, so he quietly retracted the finger he had on the send button, but the text he had typed in the chat box still went through. Undefined Dream, I'm an orphan, failed man, if you don't reply, your horses won't escape unscathed. Kminai was quick to retract. Notification, failed man has withdrawn a message. He glanced at the message from Undefined Dream, casually typed a reply with his mind, and sent. Failed man, although I sympathize with you, what does that have to do with whether you have superhumans at home? Undefined Dream, your mom, I mean the game character I'm using is an orphan. My starting point is in an orphanage, not that I was an orphan in my past life, get it? Failed man, Smee Mace, failed man, now that you mention it, I get it. Are there superhumans in the orphanage? Undefined Dream, none. Seeing this line of text, Kminai burst out a curse in vernacular. Damn. He took a deep breath, and after a long while, with a look of utter dejection, he accepted a fact. It turns out I'm the only one who started in hell surrounded by 8 superhumans. Chapter 17, Campus daily life. After that brief moment earlier, the player had not spoken again. The other two local players in the discussion group remained silent, eerily so. Kuminai understood, given that a player's identity at the start should be random: office workers, orphans, fugitives. Anything was possible. They might have been in situations where they couldn't break away, like paying respects at their parents' graves, so not replying for the time being was not a big deal. He didn't bother with that discussion group anymore and finally arrived at the school's teaching building at 07:20. Just as he ascended the stairs, he brushed past a familiar figure, and a faint voice reached his ears. "You're up so early, yet you arrive at school so late?" Baekhyuwoo spoke, pausing 2 or 3 steps higher on the stairs, turning her head to look down at Kuminai. "I went for a run, so I was a bit late," Kuminai replied, lifting his eyes from his phone to meet her gaze. A ray of morning light streamed through the window at the end of the corridor, falling on her lead gray bright hair, as if one could see their own reflection in her crisp pupils. Baekhyuwoo casually tossed him a bottle. "Here, Mom asked me to give this to you." "Oh." Kuminai caught the bottle and glanced down at it. It was a bottle of calcium tablets. "Study hard." Baekhyuwoo quirked the corner of her mouth at him, then continued upstairs. "Sure, sis, same to you," Kuminai casually replied as he watched her back. The students walking up the stairs, both boys and girls, would mostly give sidelong glances towards Baekhyuwoo. Kuminai didn't want to talk to her at school for this very reason. If this were a Japanese school setting, she'd be the type to find love letters overflowing from her shoe locker when she opened it in the morning. Kuminai continued up the stairs and stopped on the second floor. The first classroom around the corner was his class. He put his phone in his drawer and sat down in his seat. By then, the classroom was already full of students. In any parallel world, high schools in China are always among the most competitive. The reason why it's rare to see Chinese high schoolers saving the world in fantasy themes is typically because their daily schedule is filled with classes from morning to afternoon, followed by evening self-study after dinner, with their time clearly organized. Luckily, with summer vacation approaching, the school had discontinued the evening self-study. This allowed Kuminai to stay home last night. However, for Kuminai, being at school was far more relaxing than being at home. After all, compared to being trapped with a bunch of secretive monsters, forced into playing a hair-raising pretend game, he would rather stay in school, do some questions, and ease his tight nerves. This body's former self didn't have many friends either due to a very solitary personality. He usually kept to himself, which minimized the trouble of socializing. Upon entering the classroom, Kuminai heard the boys and girls gathered together, fervently discussing the superhuman attack that had occurred in the city center last night. In this world, the essential nature of the superhero's video dark web was similar to that of adult websites in his past life, officially prohibited, yet most people have a link or two saved just in case. At that moment, a boy sitting in the back row had placed his phone on the desk, playing the live broadcast recording from last night, with other students crowding around the desk. As the volume of discussion and exclamations rose, few remained in their seats, all drawn to the commotion. When, at the end of the recording, Kinya suddenly burst out from the darkness, his eerie mask filling the entire screen, although many students were mentally prepared, they still jumped in fright when they saw the scene, scattering away from the desk with screams. The entire classroom fell quiet for a second, and those who weren't watching looked up from their desks, exchanging glances as if they expected the class teacher had arrived. Kuminai, toying with his phone, had already grown accustomed to such commotion. He yawned, thinking to himself, do they understand? This is the terrifying crowman's oppressive presence. Anyone who wants to play a villain in the future had better learn a thing or two. There were also many high school girls who were fans of Magical Girl Ash. When they saw last night's video on TikTok, they were screaming in excitement, saying how elegant and stylish the outfit was, determined to save their pocket money to buy one. It was common for students to purchase 1-to-1 scale replicas of the Magic Girl cosplay outfits on online shopping platforms, similar to how people buy merchandise related to their favorite celebrities. As stars gradually fade from people's sight, naturally, another kind of person replaces them to stimulate a similar economic effect. At this moment, the whole teaching building was bustling with noise. Just about every student was discussing last night's events with no sign of stopping, indicative of the high level of attention the matter received. Mostly, it was naive boys fiercely debating the combat capabilities of the superhumans, afraid that their favorite superhero might seem inferior. Kuminai sat quietly in a corner of the classroom, resting his chin on his hand. He was quite curious what these people would think if they knew that Magical Girl Ash, in reality, was a junior high student 2 grades younger than them. However, considering the chaotic personalities fostered by internet culture that beset contemporary high school students, even after learning of this magic girl's identity, they would likely become even more zealous in their speech. Well, at most, The supportive comments would shift from "Sister is so awesome, I love her," to "Ash, Mommy loves you," such bizarre remarks. Among the high school male crowd, the fans of diviner Black Wukong were especially numerous, and it wasn't unusual for figurines of this divine communicator to sell out overnight. However, the students in the class were discussing members of his own family. Having grown up with them, Kuminai knew each person's true nature, so the mystery that otherwise attracted others was absent for him. Even knowing their secret identities didn't captivate him with their charm. He couldn't fathom why Baizini's popularity was so frighteningly high in China, even outpacing other members of the Magical Girl Alliance by a large margin. Perhaps in a country as conservative as China, where everyone was used to watching magic girls who were pure-hearted and well-mannered on TV, a magic girl who flaunted her disobedience and independence so boldly was a refreshing sight. Of course, speaking of such characters, there was an even more independent figure involved in last night's events. To be precise, that individual had been so headstrong that he had faced universal condemnation. Undoubtedly, it was Kuminai's father, King, also known as the Vigilante Kingya. It was a harsh reality that in Chinese high schools, admitting to being a fan of a widely condemned, subpar vigilante like Kingya could lead to isolation and ridicule, and even get you labeled as mentally abnormal. Even political studies teachers would proclaim in class that it's totally fine to idolize superheroes and magic girls since they are the heroes of the people and the country. However, low-grade characters like Kingya should be avoided to prevent negative influence. That said, there were always a few eccentric individuals in every class who insisted on going against the tide and liking something different, so despite being overwhelmingly rejected by society, Kingya did in fact have a significant fan base in China, although the composition of this group was somewhat questionable. There were 4 classes in the morning. Each time the bell rang for the break, Kuminai would make sure to find an empty spot to silently complete 20 push-ups. So by the time school ended at noon, he had managed to drag his sluggish, tractor-like body through the 100 push-ups required for his daily task without missing a single one. Daily Task 2, do 100 push-ups, completed, reward received, 1 freely assignable attribute point. Kuminai, looking dejected, slumped in his seat, gasping for air as he looked at the panel. He was genuinely worried he might drop dead any second now. Starting out in hell wasn't a joke, his body was beyond being described by the mere words poor constitution. Frail would be a more appropriate term. He rested his head on the desk for a moment before opening the player panel, pretending to scroll through short videos on his phone so as not to attract attention from his classmates. He clicked the plus sign next to the physical fitness attribute, prompting a notification to pop up. Notification: 1 attribute point has been added to the physical fitness attribute. Current player attributes are as follows: physical fitness, 10 points, neurological reaction, 9 points, spiritual power, 10 points. Kuminai moved his shoulders a bit and couldn't be sure if it was just his imagination, but the feeling of fatigue seemed to have eased somewhat. At the same time, a subtle warmth flowed back and forth through his bones and muscles like the tide. After allocating the points, he closed the panel. With nothing else to do, he lay his head down on the desk and began scrolling through videos. Just opening an entertainment app in this world, like Dian or Weibo, would almost immediately present a superhero's face, or at least be on the way to seeing one. As soon as Kuminai opened the video app, the first recommended video was a highlight reel of the Superhero Roundtable's top hero, Channeler Zeus. Chapter 18 Mythical Carriers Frondo Gomez. This superhero's code name is Channeler Zeus. He is also a member of the Superhero Roundtable and is ranked number 3 on the association's leaderboard. When Kuminai came across this video, he thought to himself, what bad luck. Am I cursed to watch highlight reels of the final boss again? As the name suggests, Frondo Gomez is a divine communicator. The path he channels symbolizes the supreme god king of Greek mythology, Zeus. Every time Frondo appeared on camera, he consistently presented the same image. His face always bore the smile of an all-American boy. To be more precise, it was the kind of smile that was slightly naive yet candid, offering a row of neatly aligned teeth. With blonde hair and blue eyes, his features were handsome, and his countenance rugged. His looks could rival the peak era David Beckham, and some might say he even surpassed him. Combining a superior appearance, impeccable power, and a universally recognized status, he was almost like a presidential figure in the United States. After a national vote, multiple American media outlets named him the most perfect man in the world #1. Now he is undeniably the most popular superhero in Europe. On the internet, one can easily find news and articles that lavishly praise his heroic stature to a tiresome degree. But even as such a figure, he is ranked only number 3 within the Superhero Association. Being third means that ahead of him, there are 2 more mysterious figures with abilities surpassing his, and like the number 7 ranked Kingya, their information is not disclosed to the public. Kuminai considered that perhaps the top two individuals in the association's ranks would only take action in the event of an apocalyptic crisis. After all, as a player, if he survived until the end, an inevitable confrontation with those two figures was unavoidable. Kuminai's mission was to become that crisis capable of destroying the world. About Fernando Gomez, Kuminai had watched a public speech about him on Weibo the day before, discussing how superhumans and humans should coexist harmoniously in society, touching upon various issues like employment and education for superhumans. But Kuminai hadn't absorbed a single word, as at that time, his attention was entirely focused on the character panel above Fernando's head. The combat power rating given to Fernando Gomez by the system was S+ grade. In other words, apart from Bewena, he was a notch stronger than anyone else in Kuminai's family. One could say he stood at the very pinnacle of the world without exaggeration. It's no surprise that in the world of this parallel universe, among the chaos of superhuman categories like superpower users, mutants, magic girls, divine communicators, blood clan, and so on, divine communicators naturally had the highest potential. The power system used by divine communicators is derived from mythology, inherently one level above the rest. Saying they're ahead at the starting line is not an overstatement. It's worth mentioning that divine communicators tend to appear rather average in the first 5 stages of their path, but once they reach the 6th stage, they achieve a qualitative leap in their capabilities. To use Bei Kai-Yu from his family as an example, she too is a divine communicator, channeling the path of Sun Wukong from Chinese mythology. According to the system's extrapolation, the normal evolutionary path for this route is Immortal Stone, Spiritual Monkey, Monkey King, Immortal Acolyte, Horse's Fortune, Great Sage equaling Heaven, Prisoner under the 5 Elements Mountain, Golden Hooped Monk, Fighting Buddha Sun Wukong. Presently, Bei Kai-Yu is cultivating at the 5th stage of the path, Horse's Fortune. And once she reaches the next stage, Great Sage equaling Heaven, she will be able to transform into the mythological carrier corresponding to the path. In layman's terms, she can temporarily take on the appearance of a deity, with a significant increase in divine power obtained from the path during this period. At that point, her combat power rating in the system would likely leap directly from A grade to S grade or even higher. Kuminai could not imagine what Bei Kai-Yu would truly look like when transformed into the appearance of the mythological carrier, but there were already real-life examples, such as the previously mentioned channeler Zeus. This monster, who ranked at the very top of the superhero roundtable and even surpassed King, had already explored the 6th stage of the divine communicator's path. According to the system's analysis, his divine communication pathway's evolution direction was Oracle Sun, Thunder Wielder, Lightning Conductor, Thunder Liberator, Storm's Heart, King of Olympus, Sky Chain, Divine Arbiter, God King Zeus. Half a year ago, he had already reached the King of Olympus stage, which is the 6th realm. Thus, he was qualified to summon the mythic vessel Zeus. Kuminai didn't need to search deliberately. He simply logged onto a dark web and clicked on the video with the highest views. The first video was the scene where Fernando Gomez transformed into the mythic vessel, Zeus. The video documented a prison riot from half a year ago. Fernando Gomez received orders from the Superhero Association and immediately took a helicopter to the Eiffel Tower for a rescue mission. By the time, a rebellion had erupted inside the superhuman prison in Paris, France. The plotting superhumans had killed thousands of guards, broken out of prison, and were murdering innocent civilians along their way, singing a high-pitched song as they paraded through the streets. They finally converged and partied all night under the brightly lit Eiffel Tower, as if declaring the sovereignty of the city. All of Paris was submerged in a hysterical swamp. At that moment, the helicopter carrying Fernando Gomez flew unobscured to the airspace right above the Eiffel Tower, capturing the attention of all the criminals below. In an instant, he leaped from the cabin, falling alone towards the bottom of the Eiffel Tower. The criminals at the base of the tower, upon seeing this, immediately mocked the foolhardy fellow. Weapons raised, they sneered and pointed at Fernando Gomez as he fell from the sky. Some whistled at him, others hurled frenzied insults, and a few jeered in mock mourning, as if conducting a ritual of a cult. But just as he was about to reach the tip of the tower, a sudden burst of lightning shot down from the sky, engulfing Fernando's body completely and forming a ball of light with arcing electricity. Immediately afterward, a torrential roar, powerful enough to drown the world, emerged from that cocoon-like giant sphere of light. It was as if day and night changed in that instant. The video was filled with blinding auroras, obscuring all sight, and no sound was recorded. Dead silence. It felt as if the world was a grand stage, performing a monochromatic mime. The sky was instantly covered by layers of clouds, and torrents of rain fell like burst floodwaters. Beneath the widespread clouds, thousands of peals of thunder accompanied a singular figure. That was a majestic silhouette, standing as if it were at the heart of the world, proudly upright on the black and white stage of this silent play, greedily and despotically basking in the spotlight upon itself. The next moment, that majestic form slowly emerged from the lightning, lifting its head. It wore a helmet forged of steel, and under the helmet's shadow, its eyes shone with the brilliance of the midnight sun. Its armor reflected the flickering lightning, glistening brightly. A pair of luminous wings, like those of a giant bird, unfurled from behind, sonorously sweeping away the harsh curtain of rain. At this moment, Zeus's entire body was pulsating with violent lightning. Against the backdrop of lightning, its sacred and inviolable head appeared more arrogant and brutal, like a monarch surveying the world. The rumble of thunder, like solemn ceremonial music, sounded endless in the sky above. Looking down following the gaze of this deity, the sinners gathered at the base of the Eiffel Tower stared blankly at the towering figure in the sky, and one by one, they knelt to the ground. Only a handful still harbored the desire to resist, but their frail bodies shivered inevitably in the wind and rain. The video stopped right there. Until the end, no one knew what became of those superhuman criminals involved in the Paris riot incident. A few informed individuals reached a consensus on this matter, keeping a verbal silence to avoid trouble for themselves. Meanwhile, the Superhero Association employed all its resources to conceal the truth of the event from the public. The whereabouts of those criminals remained unknown half a year later. To others, this video might be significant for appreciating the heroic stance of a superhero and witnessing the divine power of a superhero standing at the world's apex. But to Kaminai, this video was nothing short of a final boss preview scene. Chapter 19 Skill Selection, Part 1, What kind of mythical avatar will my older sister have? When she shows up, will she also bring full special effects like Zeus, stirring up the weather? Kaminai was thinking this and had already roughly envisioned Baekhyuo's mythical avatar in his mind. After all, Sun Wukong's appearance is well known to every household. How far off could it possibly be? Now Kaminai needed to pray that within a year, Baekhyuo's path to divinity through Sun Wukong hadn't reached the 6th realm yet, otherwise, that would be another tough enemy to deal with. But no matter how powerful those superheroes at the top of the Superhero Association were, those were concerns for 6 months down the line. At this moment, no player had grown powerful enough to contend with them. The pressing issue hanging over Kaminai's head was how to survive the encounter with his older brother Kienzai, who was about to come home. He had just caught 2 players who were Anomaly Control Bureau employees, one of them an S-class enforcer. Surely you couldn't just pull out a web shooter and slap a web on his face, then turn tail and run, right? As his thoughts drifted, the school bell rang in the teaching building, yet the classroom remained empty. This was the last afternoon class, and the schedule indicated it was time for PE. Turning to look out the window, his classmates had all gathered on the playground, leaving him alone in the classroom. Kaminai had asked the class president to excuse him from the physical education teacher, claiming he had a stomachache. Since final exams were over and vacation was near, most teachers wouldn't be too hard on him. Now, he turned his attention to the mall icon in the upper right corner of his field of vision. He had clicked it once before, and the system had clearly indicated that this function would be unlocked today at 15:00. The time was just right, and he clicked on the mall icon once more, finally entering the player mall smoothly and without any hindrance. A light blue background panel appeared before his eyes. The current version of the mall is divided into 3 pages, a page for daily consumables, a page for equipment and tools, and a page for skills. You currently have 0 mall coins. Kaminai casually browsed through the first 2 pages. In the daily consumables page, most were items like fast-acting healing spray and stamina recovery potions. One noteworthy item on this page was something called a travel ticket. According to the description, by using a travel ticket, you could instantly move to any city in the world and return to the starting point at any time. However, the functionality of the travel ticket couldn't be used during combat, so it wasn't very practical for escape. Its price was also outrageously high, 10,000 mall coins per ticket. As for the equipment and tools page, there were 10 slots, each loaded with a piece of equipment or tool, with a wide variety of items. Regarding equipment, there was everything from ancient cold weapons, to modern cold weapons and firearms, and even something as specific as Magic Girl's magic wand, with an overarching theme of diversity. As for the tools, poison dentures and magic cards were the 2 strange and oddly shaped items that appeared. According to the system's introduction, at midnight every day, this page would timely refresh to showcase 10 new pieces of equipment or tools for players to purchase. Also, the equipment and tools refreshed are only available for purchase within 24 hours. If the time limit is exceeded, they will be replaced by another batch of equipment during the next refresh. However, players can lock an item to make it stay unrefreshed until the next day, but they cannot repeatedly lock the same item. This means that a piece of equipment will stay on the page for a maximum of 2 days. If not purchased by then, it'll be gone, and you can only hope to be lucky enough to see the same item appear in a future refresh. The lower the player's level, the lower the probability of refreshing high-level equipment on the page. Conversely, the higher the level, the higher the probability. Kaminai's level was only level 1, so the current probability of refresh for this page was E-grade equipment 80%, D-grade equipment 10%, C-grade equipment 8%, B-grade equipment 2%, A-grade equipment 0%, S-grade equipment 0%. The most outrageous thing would be to refresh a B-grade equipment item, a mere 2% chance, but even if it did refresh, it would be useless without money. After reading the first 2 pages, Kaminai flipped through the textbook while clicking on the skill-exclusive page in the marketplace. Just as he entered this page, a system prompt popped up, covering his pupils. As this is your first time entering the marketplace, the system will gift you the right to obtain 2 skills for free. Please use within 24 hours. The right will vanish after the skill page is refreshed. Free to obtain 2 skills, a zero-cost purchase, huh? Kaminai's eyes brightened with interest. As the prompt disappeared, the contents of the skill-exclusive page also came into view. Compared to the previous page, the mechanism here was utterly the same. Every day, 10 skills would be refreshed, and the chance of getting higher-level skills also increased with the player's level. The current refresh rate was E-level skills 80%, D-level skills 10%, C-level skills 8%, B-level skills 2%, A-level skills 0%, S-level skills 0%. Since players could only use their free 2 skills privilege before the next refresh on the exclusive page, trying to play slick by waiting for powerful skills to refresh before using the privilege was impossible. Therefore, the choice had to be made from the existing 10 skills. Out of the 10 skills, everyone gets to pick 2 for free. But luck is another story. Maybe some player will hit that 2% and get a B-level skill right at the start on the exclusive page, Kaminai thought. Kaminai mused, I hope my luck is a bit better. Don't just give me 10 E-level skills, or I might as well just remake. After roughly understanding the rules, he began to filter through the information, setting aside what the skills could do. He first checked the names and levels of the 10 skills. This was the only way to determine just how bad his luck was. The filtering complete, the skill information slowly appeared on the panel and came into full view. 100% slap, E-level skill, refresh rate 80%, snap finger gun, D-level skill, refresh rate 10%, moon stop, C-level skill, refresh rate 8%, deception puppet, B-level skill, refresh rate 2%, thought delivery, E-level skill, refresh rate 80%, sword draw strike, E-level skill, refresh rate 80%, animal communication skill, E-level skill, refresh rate 80%, flat ground takedown expert, E-level skill, refresh rate 80%, same-sex charm skill, E-level skill, refresh rate 80%, disaster dice, D-level skill, refresh rate 10%. Note, this skill can be leveled up through usage. Kaminai stared at the sparkling skill in grid 4, expressionless. For a long time, he clenched his fist tightly, took a deep hiss of breath, almost on the verge of howling at the sky. Well, that settles it. The king of luck is none other than myself. Chapter 20 Skill Selection, Part 2. Kaminai had barely played any games in his past life, only occasional rounds of Minesweeper and Tetris. His head was always buried in literature, and just when he got into university majoring in literature, he found himself transported to another world. As a result, he had little concept of the terms and core gameplay that many games revolved around. Fortunately, the former inhabitant of the spotty was without doubt a web-addicted teen who, starting from the age of 6, had played every game adapted from real superhuman figures, ranging from single-player to pay-to-win mobile games, and he had dabbled in all the popular ones. It must be said that the capitalists of this world also had their own set of slick money-making schemes, from superhero movies to figurines and clothing, then to client-based games, and finally, the most critical moneymaker, the superhero mobile games. They crammed magic girls, supervillains, and superheroes with superpowers into the games, luring players into the game to pay for unlocking heroes based on their popularity in real life. Therefore, having inherited the memories of his predecessor, Kaminai now effectively had 10 years of web-addicted teen experience and naturally wouldn't fall short in understanding various games. You must know that all the skills in this game were exorbitantly priced, far surpassing items and equipment of the same level, so the opportunity for a free skill selection laid before him was extraordinarily precious, and to say it could directly determine the entire early progression of the game wasn't an exaggeration. In Kaminai's view, if his situation were likened to a game, then the early main theme of this game would inevitably include elements like spy, assassin, romance development, family-friendly, campus life, and so on, before gradually revealing its true nature, transforming into a full-fledged Musa hack-and-slash game. All that spy stuff, campus romance development, family-friendly themes, get as far away from me as possible. No more pretending. Players would switch to mowing down mode like Xiaoyun in Dynasty Warriors, slashing through hordes on the battlefield, killing from the Arctic to Antarctica, clearing the earth of grunts, focusing on blood and violence, with the occasional need to call on teammates to gang up and fight when facing a boss like LVBoo, just to avoid a beating. But that was the late-game strategy. If one only focused on the late game and skipped the early and mid-game, Kuminai would definitely be picking skills like Invincible Overlord Fist or Super Genesis Light Wave, without thinking twice, grabbing them all decisively, considering everything for the sake of killing as easily as mowing the lawn. However, given that he was currently in the early stage of the game, he had to choose his skills based on doing his undercover work well, otherwise, forget reaching the fighting feels awesome phase, he'd choke in frustration with an early game over without any talk of later stages. In summary, the strength of the skills wasn't as important as imagined. Selecting the most fitting skills out of the 10 available that matched his current situation was the urgent priority. Kuminai's gaze scanned over the descriptions of each skill, weighing the value of each. The number 1 skill, 100% slap, an E-rank skill, ensures a slap will hit an enemy. It's a fearsome quality skill, but its limitation is that it only deals fixed damage, so it's not very useful and was passed over directly. The number 2 skill, snap finger gun, a D-rank skill, allows you to enter the snap finger gun mode for 5 seconds. Every snap of the right hand fires an air bullet forward, with the damage linked to the player's physical fitness. The more snaps in 5 seconds, the more air bullets fired in that period. Sounds pretty interesting. Kuminai thought as he tried snapping his fingers a few times in the empty classroom and then gave up. With the agility of his fingers, he couldn't manage multiple snaps in a short period, so this skill wasn't cost-effective for him. If it were Tangmura Satoriya who had broken the Guinness World Record by snapping 296 times in a minute, perhaps this skill would have been boosted from D rank to C rank or even B rank with the right technique. The number 3 skill, Moonstep, a C rank skill, allows for a jump with added buoyancy for a short time, lasting 30 seconds. A flying skill. Could compensate for mobility, but I've got a web shooter already. If I improve my physical fitness, I won't need this bit of mobility. This skill must be pretty tempting for other players, Kuminai thought. The number 4 skill, Deception Puppet, a B-rank skill. The effect of this skill is to create a puppet. The player shares vision and hearing with the puppet and can control it while changing its voice and appearance at any time to deceive others. And when the puppet is destroyed, it emits a terrifying laughter and explodes in a small radius, causing a continuous fear effect that stuns nearby enemies for 2 seconds. With the current level of players, the maximum number of puppets that can exist is 1. Class B really is Class B. Kuminai raised an eyebrow, his right hand stroking his chin. It has quite a few uses, at the very least it can help me with my classes. Being tied down by the school is really annoying. No matter what the skills behind it were, at least this skill was one he had decided on. From the description, it seemed that it could be of significant use not only in battle but also in other situations. Kuminai stretched out his finger and clicked on the skill name, and a panel immediately popped up. You currently have 2 opportunities to acquire skills for free. Do you confirm the acquisition of the skill Deception Puppet? Kuminai didn't hesitate and clicked confirm. Skill Deception Puppet acquired. The skill has been automatically loaded into the first slot of your skill bar. The skill bar can hold up to 10 skills, and must be replaced when full. You still have 1 opportunity to acquire a skill for free. This privilege will disappear after the exclusive skill sale page refreshes. Please use it promptly. Note: you can release the skill by calling out its name in your mind or aloud. The following number 5 skill thought delivery allows the expression of thoughts in an email, and immediately sends the email to any target in the world. Kuminai already had a friend communication panel, and while this skill might have some uses, such as passing information to characters other than players, which might be miraculously effective in certain situations, it wasn't currently very useful to him. Skills number 6 Sword Draw Strike and number 7 Animal Communication skill in the exclusive sale page were the kind that one could tell their uses just by their names. Kuminai glanced at them and skipped right over. The latter even reminded him of his friend, the cheese snow leopard in another world, eliciting a wave of sentiment. Right after these 2 skills, number 8 Ground Throw Expert and number 9 Same-Sex Charm skill both seemed very interesting. The former was a quality skill, incredibly powerful. Within 20 seconds of activating the skill, any character standing on a flat surface within a 10-meter radius around the player must inevitably perform an irresistible ground throw, but this skill could not affect the same target twice during its activation period. The latter makes a person of the same gender drastically increase their fondness for you, and when their fondness reaches a certain level, you can issue an irresistible command to them. Kuminai agonized for a long time. He was quite satisfied with both skills and wanted both if possible, but he only had 1 more free opportunity to acquire a skill. Especially the ground throw expert skill was so cunning it was almost unimaginable. The moment he saw the skill description, Kuminai imagined a scene, walking into the Superhero Association's meeting room, activating ground throw expert, and watching as the likes of Zeus, Kingya, and everyone else thudded to the ground at the same moment, with not a single one able to resist. Just imagining the scene, Kuminai thought it was outrageously powerful, especially since he really wanted to see Kingya fall to the ground, with King's expression of dumbfounded shock behind the mask. Thus Kuminai secretly decided that if the 10th skill did not bring him enough surprise, then it was highly probable that his second skill would be ground throw expert. Chapter 21, Calamity Dice. Kuminai turned his attention to the last skill on the dedicated page, skill number 10. Skill name, Calamity Dice, skill level, D level, skill effect, produces a dice in hand and allows for an irreversible throw of the dice, after which an event corresponding to the number rolled will occur in reality. Each occurrence brings a different event. Skill cooldown time, 1 day. After accumulating 10 uses of this skill, it will evolve. The evolved Calamity Dice allows for 2 throws, and you can choose one event from the 2 numbers rolled. Each use of this skill presents a different event corresponding to the number on each face of the dice. Below is an exhibition of a part of the publicly available events from the event library. 1. A gigantic Mario will soon run through the street. 2. A band will soon run in front of you and play loudly. 3. A dance troupe will appear and perform the seaweed dance in front of you. 4. A huge hot air balloon ship will fly across the sky. 5. A massive whale will fall from the sky. 6. Someone will aim a machine gun in your direction and fire. This is defying the heavens. This was Kuminai's first thought after reading the skill description. He considered that this skill was purely about luck. Bad luck could abruptly disrupt an ongoing scenario with a tragic event risking his own life. But then again, he thought that if luck was on his side, perhaps rolling the dice in a desperate moment could drastically change his fate and wasn't an exaggerated idea. A double-edged sword indeed. But for Kuminai, this skill was definitely not something to use in good times, but rather as a last resort in adversity. The worst outcome could only be death, so no matter what the dice roll resulted in, it couldn't get any worse. What to do? I only have one more skill acquisition left, but I really want both this Calamity Dice and that Flatland Fall Expert. Kuminai let out a long sigh. He suddenly understood the feeling the protagonist of a harem anime must feel when forced into pure romance by the author. He could have chosen both, but he was forced to make a choice. The more he thought, the more confused he got. He decided to act decisively, and so he extended his finger to click on the Calamity Dice panel, using his last authority. He acquired this skill for free from the system. Flatland Fall Expert was after all a skill with a high gag component. It might sometimes work wonders, but relying on it to miraculously change fate was unlikely. From a practical standpoint, it was far inferior to Calamity Dice. After all, what true man doesn't want to defy fate with a roll of the dice in a dire situation? The spirit of a gambler burns deep within everyone's soul. Having chosen both skills, the gym class was also nearly over. The high school wouldn't officially start summer vacation until tomorrow noon, so he still had to come to school tomorrow morning. He glanced at today's date, June 19th. Both Baizini and Baiziling had already started their junior high vacation. This meant that for this entire summer vacation, all of China could witness a magical girl Ash freed from school's gravity, instead of one who could only appear on Saturdays and Sundays. Additionally, the likelihood of passers-by being attacked by vampires at night might also increase. For other students, the approaching summer vacation would absolutely be a mood lifter. But Kuminai was different. The word summer vacation meant that he had to spend 2 months stuck with the monsters at home, especially his eldest and second brothers, whom he currently wanted to avoid the most. One was an operative at the Anomaly Control Bureau and the other a ninja, both of them top tier in their respective organizations, not just any ordinary members. Kuminai could deceive the younger kids at home, but getting close to these two made it really easy to blow his cover, especially since Xiamo was already keeping an eye on him. Not only do I have to hide my identity from them, but I also have to find time under their watchful eyes to go out and meet other players and play the instance. It's like walking on thin ice, thought Kuminai. Should I just sacrifice the other people in the house to distract them? Maybe use some subtle tricks, hint a little to Qianzai and Xiamo about the real identities of Beikaiyu, Qiangzu, and Baizini, so both of them will focus on them and should have no time to bother with me, a muggle. Thinking this, he shook his head, thinking it was not a great idea after all. It was very likely that in the process of leaking information and guiding them, he would be discovered, so it would be best to avoid taking the initiative for now. Kuminai did not think it was unlikely that his second brother, Xiamo, wouldn't came to school to observe him, hence, even when he was alone in the classroom, he tried to cover up small movements that had to be made on the operation panel by pretending to flip a book or open a backpack, handling most other operations with his mind, so no worries were needed. Right as he opened his backpack again, the contacts icon in the upper right corner of his vision suddenly began to tremble, and a bubble with the number 1 appeared above the icon. As Kaminai pulled out his history textbook from his backpack, he raised an eyebrow. He knew this meant that he had received a message from the contacts list. He used his mind to click on the icon, opening the contacts list. A message from the local players discussion group has arrived in the discussion group, including players Unclear Dream, Fan Guan, and Good Tangerine Peel, Fan Guan. Today at 5:30 p.m., assemble at the Mage supermarket on Yandai Commercial Street downtown. Another player Unclear Dream and I will be waiting for you two there, Fan Guan. Also, I only trust those who show up. If I don't see you, I'll assume you don't exist in this city. Don't expect me to provide any information via the communication board. Exchanging information with someone I haven't confirmed face-to-face holds no benefits for me. After reading these 2 stern messages, Kaminai looked down and ran his fingers through his hair. How humorous, neither of you have anyone watching your starting points, so you can freely stroll around, he thought. Now, how am I supposed to slip away when my second brother is watching me? He knew this player with the ID Fan Quan was trying to take control, and he didn't mind letting him take the initiative to gather the players. However, this person was a bit too eager, without considering the situations of other players. Kaminai thought, however, from someone else's perspective, that if someone couldn't even make it to a supermarket downtown within 2 hours, there really wasn't much point in collaborating. After all, a player who couldn't move freely in the city and was constantly watched, how could they collaborate with him? The risk of being dragged down was much greater than the potential benefits. If Kaminai's starting point were relatively safe and free, he would undoubtedly do something similar, isolating players in precarious situations and contacting players whose circumstances were safer and who could move freely. Kaminai knew he was surrounded at home by 8 superhumans, leaving him in a perilous situation. Meeting other players now could easily drag them into trouble, especially if his elder and second brothers ended up watching them too, leaving them with nothing but the prospect of a group wipeout. Though he was aware of this, he didn't expect someone else to consider it so soon and even bring another player into the stance, leaving him caught between a rock and a hard place. If this continued, he might end up cutting contact with the other 3 local players entirely, left to struggle alone. Chapter 22 Urgent Truly, you leave me no wiggle room. Let me at least think about how to evade my family's surveillance before a meeting with you. Kaminai turned his head towards the playground and took a deep breath. According to the player Fan Quan in the discussion group, only those who arrived at Yandai Commercial Street by 5:30 in the afternoon were qualified to collaborate with him. Kaminai did want to meet them, but he couldn't even be sure of his second brother's whereabouts now. How could he dare to act rashly? Maybe his second brother was lurking in some shadow in the classroom, secretly watching him. If he rashly checked with other family members about Xiaomo's whereabouts, it could lead to trouble, especially since his younger siblings, Beizini and Beiziling, were unaware of his situation. His message asking little sister, is the second brother at home? Could be seen by Xiaomo, who might be sitting next to them, instantly confirming his suspicions. Kaminai looked at the data on the classroom wall, pondering methods to break the situation. If nothing else worked, he thought of asking the player in the discussion group if they could postpone the meeting until tomorrow, although the chances of being rejected were quite high. Right, today seems to be the second brother's birthday. With this thought, Kaminai suddenly raised his eyebrows, having devised a way to break the impasse. He decisively picked up his phone and sent a message to Beizini. Little sister, is the second brother at home? He asked. Yeah, he and Ziling are watching TV in the living room. What's up, big brother? Beizini's response came quickly. Her middle school had let out at noon, and she had only gone in the morning to collect her final exam grades and certificates. Like Beiziling, she was at home now. Kaminai typed on his phone and sent, little sister, then please keep an eye on the second brother for me. If he disappears or goes out, tell me right away. In other circumstances, he wouldn't dare send such a message. But today was Xiaomo's birthday, so he had a reason to send the message without it seeming abrupt or strange. Beizini paused for a moment before typing back, not to be weird, big brother, what are you up to? Did you forget today is his birthday? Beizini got it immediately. Oh, are you going to buy him a cake to surprise him? Yeah, Kaminai replied by text, so don't let the second brother get away even for a second and keep me posted constantly. Otherwise, if I bump into him face to face, wouldn't it be awkward? Beizini quickly sent a message. Geez, I never saw you make such an effort when it was my birthday. She paused again before adding, fine, go ahead. I'll keep an eye on the second brother for you, making sure he doesn't leave the house, or I'll break his dog legs. Receiving the message, Kaminai breathed a sigh of relief. After all, Beizini was a magic girl, and with her vision and hearing, keeping watch on the second brother wouldn't be too difficult. He had just received a sum of money in his Alipay account, earnings from last night's bet on the superhero's dark web, totaling 5,000 yuan. However, Kminai couldn't possibly use this personal money to buy a cake. Instead, he opened WeChat to ask his parents for reimbursement. This also helped make the action seem more believable, preventing the second brother from becoming suspicious. After completing these actions, it was definitely too late to order a birthday cake, so he would just buy a ready-made one from a cake shop later. The bell for class dismissal rang just then. Kminai grabbed his backpack and left, not forgetting to pilfer a set of new, unopened school uniforms from an unlucky classmate's drawer and a box of Nike sneakers from another. If it weren't necessary, he wouldn't have done this. After all, his life was at stake, and he could discard a bit of moral sense if needed. He placed the shoebox and the bag containing the school uniform into his backpack and turned his head toward the toilets in the teaching building. He chose a cubicle, closed the door, sat on the toilet lid, and opened his contact list. Mentally typing, he spoke in the discussion group. Failed man, 5:30, right? Wait for me, Fan Guan. Okay, soon, a new face spoke up, the never-before-heard from Giuseppe. Good Giuseppe, I'm also in, just got off work. Even after crossing over, I still have to slave away at my job, I'm literally sick of it. Unclear dream, we're waiting here for you guys, hurry up. Kminai sat on the toilet, closing the panel. He tried to chant the skill deception puppet in his mind. As soon as the words fell in his heart, he summoned an extremely bizarre-looking puppet. Successful release of the skill deception puppet. Using this skill consumes 20% of your physical energy. Your current physical energy remains at 80%. Skill description: create a puppet that shares the vision and hearing of the player, and can be controlled at will to change its voice and facial features in order to deceive others. Moreover, when the puppet is destroyed, it emits a terrifying laugh and explodes within a small area, causing a fear effect that stuns surrounding enemies for 2 seconds. Maximum lifetime of the puppet, 3 hours. Kminai glanced at the upper right corner of his vision where a new gray bar appeared, symbolizing his physical energy, akin to mana in online games. With no energy left, no skills could be deployed. He then turned his gaze toward the summoned puppet above him. It was about 1.8 meters tall, shrouded in a hazy gray all over, but its mouth was twisted into a sinister smile. To draw a comparison, it was like the little black figures used in Detective Conan to demonstrate crime methods. Since that player wasn't giving him a chance to breathe, if the puppet's test results met his expectations, Kminai shouldn't need to meet them in person. Instead, he would use the puppet. But before that, Kminai had to test if his idea was viable, as the precision with which he could control the puppet directly determined the outcome. This thing looks pretty abstract, but according to the skill description, I can freely adjust its appearance. Molding it into the figure of an ordinary high school student shouldn't be hard. Thinking this, Kminai first unfolded the school uniform he had swiped from a classmate's drawer and draped it over the naked body of the deception puppet. He then took out a pair of sneakers from the box, placed them on the floor, and like helping a child put on shoes, stuffed the puppet's feet into them. Next, Kminai mentally controlled the puppet to crouch down on the ground, and then tried to manipulate its physique. The moment the thought was placed, the puppet's body began to violently transform, shrinking rapidly from 1.8 meters to 1.7 meters in just 2 seconds, fitting perfectly into the school uniform and matching the size of the sneakers, resulting in a less awkward overall appearance. Kminai examined it for a moment, then focused his attention, starting to imagine a face of a normal high school student in his mind. The next moment, the deception puppet's face began to change as well, slowly distorting into a slightly juvenile and delicate face, with a healthy wheat complexion continuing from its face throughout its body, turning the dark shade to the same wheat coloring. At that moment, the puppet dressed in a school uniform truly looked like a handsome high school student. Quite convenient, I thought it'd take a lot more effort to make it look human. Kminai was quietly surprised internally, but wasn't idle. He heard the voices of 2 high school boys chatting by the urinal outside the restroom and began to try making the puppet mimic one of the students' talking manner and voice, then he had it speak softly. However, just then, Baizini sent a message. Kminai stopped testing and looked down. Big brother has been in the restroom for a while now, could be constipated, so just go ahead and buy the cake. Humphrey, if it comes to it, I'll trap him in the restroom and won't let him out. Baizini. After reading the message, Kminai's heart suddenly sank. Xiamo had been in their home bathroom for a long time? Something's not right. Big brother might have already escaped into the shadows from the restroom and left home, but Baizini doesn't know he has this trick. He thought, oh no, that means Big brother could have already been looking for me minutes ago. I need to hurry. While thinking, Kminai quickly double-checked the deception puppet's speaking voice, then saw the puppet opening its mouth, speaking in a mosquito-like voice. Those mock test questions are really tricky, especially that last big problem. Kaminai breathed a sigh of relief. Whether it was the timbre or the intonation, the imitation was nearly perfect. It sounded almost exactly like the boy who had been by the urinal just moments before, and the similarity was so uncanny it was a bit eerie, almost creating an uncanny valley effect. He had the deception puppet crouched down, hiding in a corner of the stall, then he stepped out of the restroom first, casually closing the door. Afterwards, while washing his hands at the mirror, he controlled the deception puppet to stand and walk out of the stall, joining him to wash its hands beside him. Then, the two walked out of the restroom side by side, split back to back in the hallway, and headed in different directions, disappearing into the shadows by the hallway entrance. Chapter 23 Double-Sided Action June 19th, dusk, the rooftop of an abandoned teaching building at Huanjing Third High School. The setting sun cast a bloated shadow from the corner's solar panel on the ground, the rusty metal frame seemed on the brink of collapse. After a moment, a figure slowly emerged from the shadow, clearly a youth dressed in a white shirt and jeans. Xiamo leaned against the railings, motionless as he oversaw the whole school. His gaze drifted from the playground to the school gates, from the infirmary to each academic building. Whether it was students chatting in the hallways or figures running on the field, he saw them all. In just a few seconds, his gaze locked onto a figure on the second-floor corridor of a teaching building. The figure, with a backpack and head down, was engrossed in a cell phone, walked slowly out from the restroom, hurried towards the stairwell, then descended the stairs as if in a rush. Xiamo's gaze followed him without wavering for a moment. Kaminai made his way out of the teaching building and headed towards the school gates before boarding a bus at a nearby station. Xiamo memorized the appearance and license plate number of the bus, and then his form dissolved like ink splashing down into the shadows at his feet. Soon, the rooftop of the abandoned teaching building returned to silence. As if no one had been there, under the sunset's glow, it resembled a slowly decaying piece of orange peel. At this very moment, on bus number 07 Route 09 in Huanjing, Kaminai stood in an inconspicuous corner, holding onto a handrail while scratching his nose, the smell of mothballs and disinfectant mingling unpleasantly in the air. It was rush hour, and the bus was crowded. It swayed violently from time to time, causing him to bump into the sweaty man next to him. The cacophony of short video sounds, the bus engines buzzing, and a woman scolding her child piled up into a messy heap, almost suffocating. He sighed softly, lowering his gaze to his phone. On WeChat, King finally responded to his message, sending him 500 yuan to buy Xiamo a cake, and told him to be frugal with the rest before stopping his replies. Quite stingy, considering the salary you draw from the Superhero Association every year could buy at least 2 houses in Huanjing, Kaminai grumbled to himself. Though displeased, his fingers honestly tapped to receive the payment. In reality, Kaminai wasn't short of those few hundred yuan, especially since winning 5,000 yuan on the dark web the previous night was quite a sum for a high schooler. However, a sudden influx of money could arouse suspicion, so he should ask his parents for reimbursements like an ordinary high school student would. Kaminai pocketed his phone, slipped his left hand into his jacket pocket, and gripped the handrail with his right, turning to look out the rumbling, vibrating window. Although his pupils reflected the swiftly passing landscape outside the window, at that moment, his attention was entirely focused on another scene unfolding in his mind. Deception Puppet shared its vision and hearing with the player. Hence, everything it saw and heard was synchronously transmitted to Kaminai's brain. The experience was starkly disorienting, akin to a schizophrenic playing FPS and MOBA games in dual windows. It was normal to be overwhelmed, but he was trying his best to adapt to the tearing sensation of controlling 2 bodies simultaneously. Over time, the irritation of being on the bus gradually eased. After controlling the puppet to leave the school, Kaminai commanded it to walk toward Yindai Commercial Street on foot. It was only now that he realized he had miscalculated. He should have at least stuffed a couple of coins into the uniform pocket of the puppet before they parted, so it could take the bus. However, manipulating the puppet to walk did have the effect of getting used to it, so it wasn't too bad. He put on headphones on the bus, closed his eyes to rest, while concentrating on controlling the puppet's movements. First, he had the puppet look at its face in the glass showcase of a clothing store, making several expressions to check for smoothness. After becoming proficient, there was hardly any sense of incongruity, even to the extent of being able to precisely control the puppet's micro-expressions. Kaminai also took this time to check other matters, finally confirming that the deception puppet could use skills, props, and equipment, but couldn't use other functions of the panel. The puppet's 3 attributes were entirely on par with the player's attributes, which is to say, though frustratingly, it inherited Kaminai's frail body. Beyond this, the biggest difference between this puppet and the player themselves was probably weight. The weight of the puppet was far lighter than that of a normal person, so if not carefully controlled, a casual jump could send it 3 to 4 meters high, as light as a balloon. If there was a chance of being exposed in front of other players, it would definitely be this issue. But Kuminai had thought it through. He could explain to other players that the body was so light because of a passive skill that reduces body weight learned from the skill specialty page, or perhaps the body itself was superhuman, inherently possessing a superpower that made it light. Generally speaking, they wouldn't verify it that thoroughly. However, looking at it from another angle, the puppet's lightweight also brought a benefit, that it could do something Kuminai currently could not, using a web shooter to fire webs and swing through the air, moving at high speeds above the city like Spider-Man. Kuminai couldn't do it due to insufficient physical fitness, lacking the strength to support his weight. The puppet, on the other hand, was different. Although its strength was the same as Kuminai's, its weight was much lower, so it could potentially achieve this. After preparing, all that was left was to control the puppet to head to Yandai Commercial Street. That place wasn't far from Hwanjing 3rd High School, only a half-hour walk. On the bus, Kuminai opened the system panel again, looked at some introductory items in the settings, and confirmed again those rules that were relatively important to him. Players cannot see each other's game panels, so there's no need to worry about being identified through the panel by others, as the deception puppet won't give away itself. Players can only read superhuman identities. If it's not a summon with its own consciousness but entirely controlled by the player, it can enter an instance as a unit representing the player. This is often used to probe the situation inside an instance. The same instance can only be challenged once a day. If a player dies inside an instance, they will not die but will be respawned outside of the instance. Some instances take place in real-world scenarios, while others whisk players into a separate dimensional space. After an instance ends, all players who participated in the instance will appear nearby in a confirmed unmonitored location. Chapter 24. Happy birthday. After confirming that everything was correct, Kuminai let out a soft sigh of relief and opened the communication list on the bus. He was still inputting his thoughts to type and clicked to send in the discussion group. Failed man, how much longer until you all arrive? Fan Guan, didn't we say 5:30? It's only 4 now. Unclear dream, we can get there early. Good Giuseppe, I'm already on my way, waiting for you guys here. Kuminai thought that the deception puppet's maximum duration was 3 hours. He had summoned the puppet exactly at 4 p.m., so it would disappear at 7 p.m. if he had to wait until 5:30 to meet the other local players. He needed to resolve things within an hour and a half to slip away from them in advance. So the sooner he met up with them, the better. Otherwise, if he was chatting with them and the puppet suddenly exploded or disappeared, the consequences would be self-evident. Boarding the bus in front of the school, the journey from Hwanjing 3rd High School to Old Jingmei District took merely 5 minutes. He was already nearing his stop. While using WeChat to pre-select a cake with the owner of a cake shop in the district, Kuminai typed and asked in the communication panel. Failed man, open the mall. On the skill-exclusive page you can choose 2 skills to obtain for free. Have you chosen? Fan Guan, I have. Good Giuseppe, I refreshed 2 C-grade skills and took them both. Unclear dream, then you're quite lucky. The 10 skills I refreshed on that page only had 1 C grade, the rest were all E and D grade. Fan Guan, normal, the refresh rate for B grade skills is only 2%. As players level up in the future, the refresh probability for high-level skills will become higher. Originally, Kuminai had been wondering whether the first refresh of the skill-exclusive page was guaranteed to produce a B-grade skill. He appeared lucky but maybe everyone was the same. Now it seemed he truly did just get lucky. He encountered a B-grade skill with a 2% refresh probability and got it for free through his starting permissions. If he were trying to refresh such a high-level skill at any other time, he wouldn't be able to purchase it due to a lack of mall coins and could only watch helplessly. It's rare to have such luck. I hope things continue to go smoothly. Thinking this, Kuminai's gaze moved to the window outside. High-rise residential buildings captured in his pupils. Fleeting, pedestrians rode by on electric bikes, getting stopped by traffic police for not wearing helmets. Looking at the silhouettes of people hanging laundry on their rooftops, Kuminai couldn't help wondering whether Kusagakure was currently trailing him or perhaps really staying in the bathroom at home playing on his phone. Or could it be that Kusagakure was actually hiding on the bus, and he just hadn't noticed? No matter what, he couldn't confirm and had to proceed with the most conservative approach, ensuring precision at every step. Kuminai placed his hand on his phone but then set it down again. Soon enough, the huffing and puffing sound of the bus's exhaust reached his ears, and the bus stopped at a station in the Old Jingmei District. There were quite a few passengers getting off the bus at the same district, and he followed the stream of people off the bus. Meanwhile, at a billiards club in Old Jingmei District, in an empty rooftop area, Kusayamo's figure emerged from the shadows. Looking down, under the dusky twilight, Kuminai left the crowd and turned into a lane, walking slowly forward. Kusagakure slowly moved across the rooftops of several high-rise buildings, keeping his eyes locked on Kuminai's movements, never letting him escape his sight for even a moment. Soon, Kuminai walked into Old Jingmei Street number 3 and entered a cake shop with a sign that read Sam Bakery. He walked directly to the counter, took out his phone, and said something to the shop owner. The owner glanced at him, then brought out a large package from the back kitchen and handed it to him. A cake shop? Hiding behind a large standee, Xiamo cautiously peeked out his head, stealthily observing Kaminai inside the shop. Kaminai, having taken the package from the owner, exited the shop with it in hand. While playing with his phone, he strolled towards home, looking every bit like a delivery boy. Xiamo followed Kaminai in silence until he saw him enter the duplex apartment building and get on the elevator. Only then did he stop walking. He watched the elevator doors close and descend slowly before stepping out from behind a large billboard and turning into the deserted alley behind him. After school, Minai only went to that cake shop before heading home, he thought. He didn't meet with anyone. If there's an issue, it should be connected to that cake shop. It seems the owner knows him. I wonder what they talked about. Minai had a box in his hand when he returned. I don't know what was in it, but I'll check it out later. With these thoughts, Xiamo looked around the alley to make sure no one was watching, then slowly disappeared into the shadows at his feet. When he opened his eyes again, he was seated on the toilet in his home bathroom. The sound of the doorbell echoed from outside the bathroom. Xiamo listened to Beizini's pitter-patter footsteps rushing to open the door, knew that Minai had returned, so he pressed the toilet flush lever. Amidst the noisy flushing, he turned on the faucet, washed his hands, and only then approached the bathroom door. His hand on the doorknob, he slowly turned it and pushed the door open. At that moment, a sudden snap sound startled him. Xiamo had already noticed someone outside and knew it must be his sister's doing, so he pretended to be surprised and extended his hand to protect his head. When he looked up, the lights inside the room were off, and in the dim corridor, colorful confetti fluttered down from the sky, landing on his hair and face. Xiamo paused slightly, then slowly lowered his hands from his forehead. He touched the paper confetti dangling on his face and looked bewilderedly at the three people standing in front of the bathroom. Beizini stood there with a mischievous smile, holding a paper popper the size of a horn in her hands. Beiziling stood beside her expressionless, arms stretching out a banner that read Happy Birthday Xiamo. Kaminai stood between his two sisters, hands cradling a cream cake lit with several candles. The candlelight reflected his awkward expression, as if he was somewhat reluctant. Surrounded by scattered confetti on the floor, the three of them spoke almost simultaneously. Happy birthday, second brother. Beizini said. Happy birthday, I want a red envelope, Beiziling said. Happy birthday, another year older for you, Kaminai said. Xiamo stood at the bathroom door for a long while, then slowly extended his large arms to hug his two sisters and brother, bringing their heads close together. Thank you. I am touched. He said softly, his gaze meeting Kaminai's in the middle.